Chapter 2930. Ling Han, you are the greatest prodigy of all time. Why must you bully the weak? A voice rang out, but it immediately calmed everyone down. It was Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake, a fifth-step cultivator. Ling Han looked over. The crowd parted, and he saw a middle-aged man slowly walking over. There was a faint smile on his face, and the image of a giant snake appeared behind him. It was several hundred meters long, and it exuded a terrifying aura. Boom! Without another word, he punched out with an iron fist. Power surged out, condensing into a giant fist that smashed toward Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake was enraged. You're too much. Who would open a fight just because they didn't agree? Do you have any respect for your status? We are all fifth-step cultivators, and we are close to the peak, but you're acting like a street thug. But he had no choice but to accept it. He was one of the 9 strongest people in the World Alliance. Others could retreat, but he could not, because he was the face of the World Alliance. Bang! He took on Ling Han's attack, but his body shook, and he involuntarily retreated more than 10 steps. The World Alliance members were all speechless when they saw this. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake was at the middle stage of 5th step. Now, no one was using their Heavenly Venerable symbols or mystic arts, and they were only using their original power to attack, but Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake was still no match for him. It was clear how powerful Ling Han was as a 3rd-step cultivator. You're too much. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake roared. He had already activated his Heavenly Venerable symbol, and his strength instantly increased by more than 40 times. Boom! A terrifying aura surged, and the giant snake image behind him became more and more real, as if it was about to come to life. He took the initiative to attack, rushing toward Ling Han and punching out with his right hand. Boom! The giant snake image in the sky suddenly moved, biting toward Ling Han. Symbols lit up on the giant snake, and its aura was shockingly majestic. This was a mystic art, and it was also how he had obtained the title of Spirit Snake. Ling Han did not care. All mystic arts were ultimately about power. As long as he was powerful enough, he could crush everything. Simple, direct, and domineering. Ling Han punched out, and he also activated a Heavenly Venerable symbol. Bam! Heavenly Venerate Spirit Snake spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. First-rank talisman, he said through gritted teeth. It wasn't that his combat strength was lacking, but that his Celestial Venerate talisman was simply too weak. Xiao, Ling Han's figure charged out, and he chased after Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake. Today, he wanted to make sure that no one in the entire World Alliance could remain standing. He unleashed a series of furious punches, completely suppressing Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake, and he was soon riddled with wounds. Everyone's spirit was shaken. At first, they were still filled with confidence in Feng Wuding, but they were also at the 5th level of battle prowess. So was there really anyone who could stop Ling Han? Stop! A deep voice rang out, and another 8 figures appeared. They were the other 8 fifth-step powerhouses from the World Alliance who were stationed here. They could not help themselves when they saw Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake being beaten up. Otherwise, the World Alliance would definitely become a laughingstock. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake heaved a sigh of relief. If 9 fifth-step powerhouses attacked together, he did not believe that they could not suppress Ling Han. However, Ling Han pretended not to hear him, and his fists swung out even more rapidly. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake suffered another heavy blow, and he could not help but cry out in pain. He was so ashamed that he wanted to die. Ling Han, you've gone too far. The 8 fifth-step powerhouses were all enraged, and they all attacked one after another. Anyone who could become a Heavenly Venerable was a supreme prodigy, let alone someone who had reached the 5th step. There might not even be one in several epochs. Now that there were 9 such powerhouses attacking together, even a 5th-step powerhouse would tremble. However, Ling Han did not care at all. So what if there were 9 of them? He activated a plane projection and suppressed them. After so many years, not only had he restored all 13 planes, but his physique had also improved because he had advanced to the late stage of the 3rd step, causing the upper limit of the planes he could accommodate to reach 19. If he released all 19 planes at once, he would definitely be able to catch Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake and the others off guard and make them suffer. However, he naturally could not reveal his trump card all at once. Activating a plane projection was enough. Even if it was just a plane projection, it was terrifying enough. Heavenly Venerable Spirit Snake and the others groaned, and expressions of discomfort appeared on their faces. Plane suppression. Exploded. The 9 people shouted and attacked one after another. After a flurry of attacks, cracks quickly appeared on the plane projection, and then it shattered with a loud bang. However, Ling Han also took advantage of this opportunity to attack. With the power of the Rage Fist enhanced by the first-class symbol, he was simply unmatched. With a single punch, he sent a 5th-step powerhouse flying. In the time it took for the plane projection to shatter, Ling Han had already sent 5 Heavenly Venerables flying. The members of the Heaven Alliance were so shocked that their scalps went numb. No wonder Ling Han could come and go as he pleased in the Frenzy Army's camp. He was too powerful. Who among the 5th step could stop him? Could Feng Wuding do it? They had originally been quite confident, but now they were hesitating. Clap, clap, clap. A golden-haired man walked over, his body radiating a boundless aura. It was as if he was the king of the world, and anyone who saw him could only bow down and worship him. Feng Wuding, the previous generation's strongest prodigy in the origin world. Not bad, Feng Wuding said. However, his expression was completely indifferent. Ling Han, you've finally come to challenge me. Pick your sister. Ling Han roared and attacked aggressively. Challenge? Bullshit, he was here to beat people up. With the support of the first-class symbol, Ling Han's battle prowess was incomparably terrifying. No matter how self-confident Feng Wuding was, he did not dare to take him lightly. He roared, "Don't think that you're the only one who has grasped the first-class symbol." An aura that could suppress all ages circulated. As expected, Feng Wuding had also activated a first-class symbol, increasing his battle prowess by more than 80 times. He was not afraid to clash head-on with Ling Han. One had to admit that Feng Wuding was truly extraordinary. A few 100 million years ago, he was still a 9th-stage celestial king, but now, not only had he reached the 3rd step, but he was even at the peak of the 3rd step. In terms of cultivation level, he had already surpassed Ling Han. With the support of a first-class symbol, his battle prowess was about the same as Ling Han's. What? Feng Wuding could not accept this. He had a slight advantage in cultivation level, but his strength was only on par with Ling Han's? No way. No way. He was the previous generation's strongest prodigy in the origin world. He was blessed by the heavens, and no one could compare to him. Why was he inferior to Ling Han? So what if it was Lin Yu Lian and Xan Chihu? They could only be called the strongest prodigies across the ages, but compared to him, they could only be called ordinary prodigies. How could Ling Han be so strong? Could it be that Ling Han had extracted too much of the plane's power, allowing him to have an advantage in terms of strength? This was not impossible. Generally speaking, as long as one extracted around 100 or so planes' power, they would be able to contend with a prodigy who had nurtured a plane within their body before they reached the 3rd step. If it was a few hundred or even 1,000, they would be able to have an advantage before they reached the 5th step. That must be it. Chapter 2932. It turned out that the limit of the number of planes that a Heavenly Venerable's body could contain was not 2, but up to 3. Feng Wuding was also astonished. He had not expected that apart from him, there was actually someone else who could do this. "Do you think that this is my limit?" he shouted loudly, and the 4th plane projection was unleashed. "Do you think that this is my limit?" he shouted loudly, and the 4th plane projection was unleashed. But. This time, everyone's mouths were agape, and they were completely speechless. For planes, how did he do this? Meanwhile, Ling Han smiled faintly. 4 dimensions, and this just barely made him feel like a child of destiny, but compared to the millions of seeds that were still only in the embryonic form of the dimensions in his body, this was only a small matter. Limited by his cultivation base, even Ling Han could not possess millions and millions of planes. Right now, he only had 19. The question was, what was Feng Wuding's limit? He was somewhat curious, but he did not care. He was not here to spar with the other party, but to beat him up. Boom, he unleashed another 5 plane projections in one go. Everyone choked. Was there something wrong with their eyes? Why did they see something that was completely impossible? 8 planes. Feng Wuding was instantly suppressed, and he retreated repeatedly. His back was even bent. The suppression from the 8 planes was too powerful, and even he couldn't bear it. However, in the next instant, he roared angrily, and boundless power surged out of his body. A total of 10 planes appeared around him. These were his true trump cards. 10 planes, an unparalleled miracle that had never been seen since ancient times. Everyone was also dumbfounded. Ling Han was already ridiculously powerful, and he possessed 8 planes. This was something that they did not even dare to imagine. However, Feng Wuding was even more monstrous, and he had taken 2 more steps forward on the impossible. This was a child of destiny. Suppress. Feng Wuding charged over with the 10 plane projections. His might was unparalleled. Among those with battle prowess at the 5th step, who could stop him? Ling Han was still speechless. He merely clenched his right fist. Another 3 plane projections were unleashed, and he instantly reversed the situation. Everyone's brains couldn't process what was going on. So what if he was an Empyrean? This was an iron law that had been broken since ancient times. Who could still remain calm? 11 planes, are you trying to defy the heavens? The people from the World Alliance were even more shocked, because they knew that the number of planes Ling Han truly possessed would increase by 1. Feng Wuding was also speechless. He was blessed by the heavens, so his body could easily accommodate more than 10 planes. However, he was limited by his cultivation level, so he could only allow 10 planes to grow. Although Ling Han only had 1 more plane than him, it was something beyond his ability. It was impossible for him to catch up. Ling Han charged straight in, bringing with him the 11 planes, and firmly suppressed Feng Wuding. Everyone was dumbfounded, and then they sighed with emotion. The previous generations chosen one of the origin world couldn't compare to Ling Han. As expected, this fellow was more monstrous. Many people felt a sense of pride. After all, Ling Han was one of them, while Feng Wuding was a remnant of the previous generation's origin world. No matter what, he had to be classified as an outsider. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a frenzy, they might have even started fighting. After all, this was considered an invasion. Feng Wuding snorted and didn't say anything else. He just continued to exchange blows with Ling Han. He was indeed suppressed by 1 plane less than Ling Han, but he was only slightly suppressed. It wasn't to the extent of being crushed. Thus, he could still hold on. He was unwilling to accept this. He had placed his hopes on exhausting Ling Han's set of Empyrean symbols. Ling Han's battle prowess would plummet. Moreover, he still had a trump card. His battle prowess wasn't enough, so he couldn't avoid being hit a few times. This caused him great pain, and he also felt a strong sense of humiliation. He was a supreme genius who could surpass realms to defeat enemies, but now, he was actually being suppressed in a battle at the same level. However, 2 hours were about to pass. As expected, the light of the symbols on Ling Han's body dimmed, and his battle prowess also fell by 1,000 miles. What is called a foundation? This is it. Feng Wuding laughed loudly. Another 3 symbols lit up on his body, and they were similarly supreme, capable of crushing all life. First-rate talismans heavens. Not only did he have 8 first-rate talismans, he could even form 2 sets of combination talismans, 1 set of 3 talismans, and the other set of 4 talismans. This caused his battle prowess to increase by more than 170 times, and he was still able to crush all 5th-step cultivators. Now, what could Ling Han use to block him? Everyone shook their heads. Who would have thought that Feng Wuding would actually have 3 first-rate talismans, and he could even form them? This kind of battle prowess was enough to sweep away all 5th-step cultivators. Feng Wuding's palm slammed down toward Ling Han. Ling Han let out a long roar, and the 8 symbols lit up one after another. However, he controlled them and only circulated half of them, causing his battle prowess to increase by about 500 times. But was 500 times still not enough? Bang bang bang. Ling Han completely suppressed Feng Wuding, and he rained down blow after blow, causing Feng Wuding to be like a scarecrow that could only be sent flying. Feng Wuding was completely stupefied. The reason why he had 8 first-rate talismans was because he had inherited them from the previous generation's origin world. However, he had already used up one of Ling Han's 9th-rate combination talismans, but he was still being crushed by Ling Han. He couldn't accept this. Perhaps he couldn't accept it, but he couldn't change the fact that Ling Han's battle prowess was overwhelming, and Feng Wuding could only be beaten up. "I admit defeat," he said reluctantly, but he didn't want to continue being beaten by Ling Han like this. His arrogance hadn't disappeared, and he believed that this was only because his cultivation level was still too low, and he was unable to display all of his advantages as a son of Heaven's mandate. For example, he had a total of 100 plain seeds in his body, but he had only managed to transform 10 of them into plains. As long as his cultivation level increased, even if his ability to fight above his cultivation level didn't improve, he would at least be able to maintain it. Everyone knew that once one's cultivation level increased, their ability to fight above their cultivation level would definitely fall. One fell and the other maintained. Who would win in a battle between equals? A gentleman's revenge was never too late, and a real man was someone who could bow and submit when necessary. Bang. However, he had just finished speaking when a heavy punch landed on his face, causing his nose to bleed profusely. "You!" Feng Wuding roared. "I've already admitted defeat, so why aren't you stopping? Is this how you spar?" Bang, he suffered another punch. "You're too much." Feng Wuding was filled with resentment. "You think I'm here to spar with you?" Ling Han finally spoke. "Is that not the case?" "Wrong, I'm here to beat you up. You're no different from those cats and dogs. Don't think too highly of yourself," Ling Han said coldly as he continued to punch. "What bullshit son of Heaven's mandate?" These words were too hurtful. Feng Wuding wanted to die. He thought highly of himself and believed that he was the son of Heaven's mandate, and that no one could compare to him. However, Ling Han didn't care about him at all and completely ignored him. He couldn't tolerate such disregard. Our cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 29:33. Ling Han didn't care about anything. Just as he said, he was only here to beat people up. He didn't care if they were satisfied or not. One word: beat them up. In front of everyone, Feng Wuding, the previous Yuan world's child of destiny, had been beaten up. He had lost all face. Everyone sighed. The previous Yuan world represented the past. In this era, it still depended on the Yuan world's child of destiny, and that person seemed to be Ling Han. Ling Han did not show any mercy, and violently beat up the entire Heaven Alliance, severely injuring them. Then he searched all the spatial containers on their bodies, and only then did he stop. He had obtained many great medicines. Those were the benefits that the World Alliance had given him. These celestial venerables had saved them, but in the end, they had all benefited Ling Han. "You dare to ambush my daughter? You're really courting death," said Ling Han coldly. This was the extraterritorial battlefield, and killing was forbidden here. Otherwise, these people would have died long ago. The people from the World Alliance could only groan in pain. There shouldn't be anyone at the 5th step who could defeat Ling Han, unless they were at the 6th step. But with the evolution of the environment here, even a level 6 cultivator would have their cultivation level suppressed. Most likely, they would only be delivering themselves to death, and would not be a match for Ling Han at all. "Heh, how impressive," said Xen Chihu coldly. "Ling Han, don't you know that private fights are forbidden here?" Ling Han looked at him and felt that this so-called eternal prodigy was incomparably disgusting. He didn't even have the mood to talk nonsense with him. Once he had enough power, he would directly beat him up. His cold expression caused Xen Chihu to fly into a rage. He immediately stepped forward. "Ling Han, you dare to look down on me." He attacked, pressing out with his right palm. Boom! The power of a 6th step expert surged. This power was too great, and Ling Han couldn't match it at all. But before he could retreat, Lin Yolian had already acted and blocked in front of him. She waved her jade-like hand and dissipated Xen Chihu's attack. "Brother Xen, Don't be angry, she calmly said. Get out of the way. Xen Chihu's eyes were cold. Lin Yu had a pitiful look on his face, but his expression was incomparably firm as he said, Brother X, enough is enough. What do you mean by enough? Xen Chihu laughed heartily and charged at Ling Han. You're going too far. Lin Yu Lien waved her sleeve and faced Xen Chihu. The two greatest geniuses of all eternity began an intense battle, both unleashing their full combat prowess. Rumble, 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 the heavens and earth trembled. Fortunately, this place had already become a foreign battlefield, and ordinary people had long since moved away. Otherwise, if they were to fight like this, who knew how many ordinary people would suffer? Even so, Ling Han and the other experts with battle prowess at the fifth step had no choice but to retreat. The shock waves were also incomparably terrifying, and there was no need to take them head-on. After fighting for a long time, Xen Chihu finally stopped. They were both the greatest geniuses of all eternity, but he couldn't do anything to Lin Yu Lien, and Lin Yu Lien couldn't do anything to him. Unless they truly fought with their lives on the line, it would be impossible to determine a victor even if they fought for 100 million years. Xen Chihu looked at Ling Han menacingly. He did not conceal the killing intent in his eyes at all. Previously, he had been secretive and used the excuse of decapitation to set a trap for Ling Han, but looking at his current expression, as long as there was a chance to attack, he would not hesitate to kill Ling Han. Ling Han fearlessly met his gaze. At worst, he would just tear open the void and leave. As long as he reached the fourth step, he would be able to completely resist Xen Chihu. And if he reached the fifth step, then beating Xen Chihu would be like beating his own son. He suppressed a wave of resentment in his heart. Wasn't the reason Xen Chihu could be so unbridled because his cultivation was higher and he was stronger? I want to be strong, I want to become even more powerful. Ling Han clenched his fists and shouted in his heart. An incomparable thirst for power arose in his heart. Everyone dispersed one after another. Because the people's morale had long been slack, the rules of the extraterritorial battlefield weren't that strict. As long as no one was killed, no one would investigate too deeply. Thus, the matter of Ling Han destroying the World Alliance passed by in a muddle. In fact, there were only a few people and forces who really wanted to argue with Ling Han. Most people still hoped to see Ling Han grow. This time, Ling Han was only collecting some interest. He knew that the cause of the disaster was Yu Borong. The other party wanted to take revenge for his son's death, so he deliberately targeted the Ling Alliance. This debt was noted down. Time passed quietly. As the environment of the extraterritorial battlefield became more and more neutral, the Frenzy Army attacked again. They stationed themselves in the distance, ready to launch a fierce attack at any time. However, because the time and place were still in favor of the fiery frost dimension, the Frenzy Army chose to bide their time. At this time, there was news from the previous origin world. Wasn't there someone staying there to see if there were any missed raw stones? And not long ago, someone actually entered the 10th dimension? Was this a 7-step expert? Of course not. This was only a 3-step expert, so how could he enter the 10th dimension? It turned out that this dimension group had a spatial overlap. It wasn't the squeezing of the top and bottom. Instead, it was like the previous extraterritorial battlefield. When walking in the 2nd dimension, one might pass through a cave and arrive at the 5th or 7th dimension. That 3-step expert had entered a passage in the 4th dimension and found himself in the 10th dimension. It was at least the 10th dimension because this place hadn't been excavated. The reason for this might be related to the emergence of Heavenly Venerable Chong Yen and the other 4 7-step experts. They were too powerful and affected the structure of this origin world. It was entirely possible because this origin world was already dead. Naturally, it couldn't withstand the power of the 7-step experts. When this news spread, people were naturally tempted. When the ancient dimensions appeared, the overall strength of Heavenly Venerables increased by a lot. However, due to their limited strength, from the 10th dimension onward, even 6-step experts couldn't set foot in it. Now, a special passage had actually been discovered. The people in the camp immediately became restless. Who would still be in the mood to sit there? Not long after, the six-step experts sent an order to allow a portion of heavenly venerables to explore the previous origin world. This could improve the strength of the entire group of heavenly venerables, but the number of candidates was strictly limited. A total of 100 people were selected to enter the previous origin world. Ling Han was also lucky enough to get a place. In addition, peerless geniuses like Xin Chihu, Wu Haoyang, and Feng Wuding were also on the list. However, Lin Yulian was excluded. She had to wait for Ling Han and the others to return before she could be rotated out. Otherwise, if all the powerful figures left, even with the suppression of heaven and earth, the Frenzy Army's attack wouldn't be able to stop them. It should be known that there was definitely a spy in Frenzy among them. The truth couldn't be hidden. Among those who were on good terms with Ling Han, only White Rice was on the list. The two of them immediately set off for the previous origin world in the void. They only had 100,000 years. They had to return, or they would be treated as traitors. Chapter 2934. Ling Han brought White Rice with him as he traveled through the void. He maintained his vigilance at all times. Once he found traces of madness, he would immediately return to the origin world. He definitely wouldn't have any thoughts of getting lucky. This time, there was only him and White Rice. Because the number of people was strictly limited, the Empress, Hun Yo, and the others stayed in the foreign battlefield and couldn't follow him willfully. Thankfully, the frenzy did not appear. Though Ling Han was on his guard, he arrived safely and smoothly in the origin world of the last generation. After knowing the truth, Ling Han and Bai Mi both felt a different kind of feeling when they stepped onto this land again. This place used to be glorious, and once represented everything, but because of madness, it turned into ruins now, forever floating in the void. Do you think there's another origin world from the previous era? White Rice suddenly asked. Ling Han was surprised. Your imagination is too rich. That's not for sure. Maybe madness came from an even more ancient era, and even the previous origin world was like us. White Rice insisted. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. That's true. The void is so big, so maybe there are ruins of another origin world. If we can find it, then won't we be rich? White Rice's eyes lit up. He was a very calm young man, but now that they were talking about an origin world, he was naturally excited. However, Ling Han thought that if his body could also evolve into an origin world, then wouldn't he be able to get whatever he wanted? Let's go. He patted White Rice's shoulder. They had to hurry. They only had 100,000 years. 100,000 years seemed very long, but to a heaven venerable, it was pitifully short. They came to the fifth plane and searched for that passage. This didn't take too much time. The two of them were very careful because Xin Chihu also came here. He definitely wouldn't let Ling Han go, and would definitely kill him if he had the chance. Ling Han had taken a considerable amount of great medicines from the Heaven Alliance, but he had left all of them for the Empress and the others. The main reason was that he needed too many resources to take the next step forward, and this bit of great medicine would not be of much use. Thus, he might as well give it to the Empress and the others. Their improvement was obvious, and it could significantly increase their strength. I'll go take a look and see if there's an ambush, said White Rice. Ling Han was more inclined to believe that if Xin Chihu had arrived earlier, then he would definitely be clinging to the treasures in the 10th plane. Therefore, he wouldn't have wasted his time waiting for him. However, it was better to be safe than sorry, so he nodded. White Rice walked over. After a while, he came back and gestured to Ling Han that he was safe. Ling Han and White Rice passed through this passageway, and they clearly didn't feel any change in space. However, as they walked, the space in front of them suddenly widened, and they appeared in another place. Although the mountains and rivers here also showed signs of development, it was not as exaggerated as the previous few levels, which were completely turned upside down. Follow me, Ling Han said. He was a master of raw gemstones. Who could compare to him in exploring raw gemstone veins? White Rice quickly followed. I say, do you know how to explore ores? Ha, don't you know that I'm known as a little expert in exploring ores? Ling Han joked. I really didn't know, White Rice said fearlessly. He was practically challenging authority. Then you just wait and see. Not only was Ling Han exploring ores, but he was also looking for a new spatial tunnel that could lead to a deeper plane. Since a tunnel had appeared, there might be a second one, a third one, or even hundreds or thousands of them. However, their luck was not so good. For the time being, they had not discovered the spatial passageway. However, they had discovered quite a considerable number of origin stone mines. With Ling Han's precise mining, every time there was a great medicine, which caused White Rice to exclaim in disbelief. "You really are a master of raw gemstones," he said in surprise. It should be known that the heavenly venerable stone could block divine sense. Even heavenly venerables couldn't penetrate it. "No, I'm a grandmaster," Ling Han said with a smile. In terms of exploring ores, White Rice couldn't help much. Thus, he took the initiative to look for a spatial tunnel. Even Ling Han couldn't cheat, so he could only spend his time exploring. Moreover, this was the 10th plane, which was extremely dangerous. Occasionally, energy storms would surge out of the ground, reaching the peak of Step 6. Thus, whether it was exploring ores or looking for a spatial tunnel, they had to be extremely careful and powerful. Otherwise, if they couldn't react in time, heavenly venerables below Step 6 would die. In reality, even heavenly venerables with Step 6 battle prowess had to be extremely careful. They might not die if they were hit by an energy storm, but they would definitely be severely injured. If they were surrounded by an energy storm, they would also die. Ling Han and White Rice split the work. There were fewer people here, so there was naturally less competition. Ling Han was also a cheat-level master of raw gemstones. One could imagine how shocking his harvest was. After a few thousand years, he had collected more than 200 great medicines. Among them, there was even an orange great medicine that could help raise one's cultivation level. In addition, there were more than 10 celestial venerable symbols, but only one was a 7th-rate symbol. The rest were all 9th-rate and 8th-rate symbols. He already had them a long time ago. The great medicine is also not bad. It can raise my cultivation level. At this stage, this should be what I need the most. The celestial venerable symbol is just icing on the cake. He felt that he had almost searched everything here. It would be best if White Rice returned immediately and told him that he had found a tunnel to a lower plane. This was once a plane world. Even though countless low-level planes had been completely destroyed in the Big Bang, there were at least 1,000 planes left. Now they had only explored 10 planes. The number of planes left was astonishing. As Ling Han explored ores, he left marks and looked forward to meeting up with White Rice. However, enemies wouldn't meet if they weren't enemies. On this day, he had just found a large ore vein. After opening up a few great medicines, he suddenly sensed a life aura approaching him. White Rice had returned. He stopped what he was doing and turned back to look. A person appeared. He was like an emperor. He had an unparalleled domineering aura, and everyone in the world obeyed him. Chapter 2936. It's better to keep this god of wealth around in the future. Ling Han nodded. Killing Feng Wuding would not resolve his hatred. His target was Yu Borong. It's decided then. Ling Han found a safe place and started gnawing on the great herbs. 10 days passed, and he had digested 10 great herbs. However, he was still a little bit away from the peak of the 3rd step. Fortunately, the god of wealth is generous enough. There are still 4 more. Ling Han muttered to himself and started gnawing on the great herbs again. 1 was not enough, and 2 was not enough either. After gnawing on the 3rd great herb, Ling Han finally reached the peak of the 3rd step. I should have spent some time to polish my foundation. However, my body has endless planar power, which is equivalent to a millstone. It has already polished my power to an extremely pure level. In addition, I don't have much time left. I will immediately break through to the 4th step. Ling Han circulated all the heavenly venerate symbols. This was a method to communicate with the essence particles. With over 200 symbols circulating at the same time, his divine soul expanded infinitely to sense the 3rd essence energy between heaven and earth. Last time, he had spent hundreds of millions of years, but now, he didn't have that much time. I have to sense the 3rd essence particle as soon as possible. Ling Han took out the orange great herb. After thinking for a moment, he immediately started gnawing on it. He believed that he could break through to the fourth step without relying on such a great herb. However, it might take 1 billion years or even 2 billion years. He did not have that much time to waste now. Wasn't the purpose of keeping great herbs for consumption? With just a few mouthfuls, this great medicine had completely entered Ling Han's stomach. Not long after, a great many particles appeared in his mind, densely packed like stars. Although there were countless particles, they could be classified. There were 6 types in total. 2 types of energy within Ling Han's body immediately resonated with 2 types of starlight particles, causing these particles to emit even more resplendent light. These were essence particles. Ling Han said in his heart, "No wonder the orange great herb could help a heavenly venerate increase their cultivation level." This was equivalent to materializing essence particles. How would he dare to waste time? He hurriedly tried to sense the essence particles that he had yet to grasp. However, as soon as his divine sense touched it, the starlight particles immediately dimmed and quickly disappeared. Ling Han shuddered. Even if he took the great medicine, it was not certain that he could break through. It could only help. He calmed down and no longer blindly touched them. Instead, he focused on one type. The intrinsic particles repelled each other. If he was greedy and wanted to grasp all the intrinsic particles in one go, the result would be that he would not be able to obtain anything. He targeted a type of particle, constantly touching it, increasing his sensitivity to this particle. The effect of the great medicine was very short. After merely half a day, his sea of consciousness dimmed and he could no longer sense anything. Ling Han didn't feel the slightest bit regretful. He released his soul consciousness again, covering the surrounding area. He had already left a mark on the 3rd essence particle in his mind. Now, he only needed to communicate with the real essence particle through this mark. Time passed quietly. 10 days, 100 days, more than 7,000 years later, Ling Han's spiritual sense suddenly trembled, and his face immediately revealed a happy expression. He had finally communicated with the 3rd type of particle. More than 200 heavenly venerate symbols lit up together, constantly extracting these particles into his body, increasing Ling Han's power. This was a messin. Ling Han suppressed the energy requirement of the planar plane in his body and used all his strength to extract these particles to increase his power, temper his physique, and stabilize his realm. The rest could be done slowly and couldn't be rushed. 100,000 years was too short. In the void, there were 3 figures hurriedly flying. Upon closer inspection, each of them was strange. They either had many hands and legs, or had many heads and many eyes. They were frenzied creations. These 3 monsters all exuded ruthless auras and were extremely powerful. However, their eyes were filled with the glow of wisdom. They were definitely not comparable to those monsters that only knew how to kill. They arrived in the previous generation's origin world. As they descended, their gazes swept across the surroundings. Their bodies changed and they took on human forms. Their auras also changed, becoming no different from humans. They strolled around, searching for clues. These were 3 6-step monsters. Their mission was very simple, which was to kill 2 people. One of them was Ling Han, and the other was Feng Wuding. After spending another 30,000 years, Ling Han finally stabilized his cultivation at 4-step. "There's still a lot of room for improvement," he muttered to himself. The maximum number of dimensions that he could derive in his body had instantly increased to 137. Furthermore, the upper limit of the quality of the dimensions was also close to high level. In addition, the power of the planar plane could also increase. However, this required too much time. Even if he was given another 1 billion years, it would still be difficult. Right now, he couldn't care less. His focus was to explore mines and open stones. After this increase in cultivation level, Ling Han's luck seemed to have suddenly improved. A few days later, he discovered a spatial passageway. He was now fearless. Even if he encountered Xen Chihu again, he was confident that he could put up a fight. After entering the tunnel, the space overlapped and changed. Half a day later, Ling Han arrived at the ruins of another dimension. He was definitely not the first person to come here. However, this was not the first 10 dimensions because the traces of mining were still very fresh. Hong, an energy storm violently surged out, and was just 30 meters in front of Ling Han. Ling Han was filled with heroism, and he punched out at the energy storm. Ping, the fist force surged out, and a hole actually appeared in the energy storm. After the fist force surged out, this hole did not heal for a long time. Only when Ling Han's fist force completely dissipated did the hole in the energy storm start to heal and quickly disappear. With my battle prowess, I should just barely be able to stand at 6 step. Ling Han had an intuitive understanding. But I'm only ranked as the weakest 6 step. There was nothing he could do about it. He had not cultivated to the peak of his current realm, and could only be called a fake 6-step battle prowess. But no matter how weak he was still a 6-step cultivator, and he was still ridiculously powerful. Just one more step, and I will have 7-step battle prowess. Ling Han's eyes lit up. If he reached 7-step, he would no longer need to worry about the energy storm here, or the powerful flames formed by essence particles. He would be able to completely mine all the treasures in this previous generation Yuan world. At that time, his cultivation would definitely soar, and he would be able to charge into 7-step cultivation. Then, his battle prowess would reach an unimaginable level. I wonder where that white rice went. Ling Han muttered to himself. Forget it, I'll first gather some great herbs and give some to that brat as compensation. He began to mine. Although he had arrived much later, with his unparalleled mining abilities, in just 100 years, he had gathered more than 20 great herbs and 3 celestial venerate symbols. He had just found a new vein of ore, and he had not even begun to explore it. However, he looked like he was listening attentively. There were sounds of battle. Fighting here was naturally a very common thing, and Ling Han did not take it to heart at first. But as the fluctuations of the battle became more and more intense, he caught a familiar aura. White rice. He was fighting with someone. Ling Han immediately leaped and skimmed toward the location of the battle. His follower was in trouble, and as the boss, how could he just stand by and watch? In just a few steps, he was already close to the battle area. He saw that White Rice was indeed fighting with someone, and his opponent was Feng Wooding. End of chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 2937. Ling Han really wanted to curse. Why was it Feng Wooding again? Did he really want to be his money boy? White Rice, I'm asking you for the last time. Where is Ling Han? Feng Wooding shouted. His tone was extremely harsh and oppressive. He completely suppressed White Rice, showing that his strength was not just one level higher. This was because he had already taken 4 steps. Feng Wooding, who was at 4 steps, was now at the peak of 5 steps. Right now, he was only at the early stage of 4 steps. He believed that once he reached the middle stage of 4 steps, or at most the late stage, his battle prowess would jump to 6 steps. The Son of Destiny was indeed extraordinary. Although White Rice was monstrous, he was much weaker than Feng Wooding. His battle prowess was also close to the peak of 5 steps, but there was still a difference between them. Moreover, there was a huge gap between the two of them in terms of heavenly venerable symbols. Hence, White Rice was completely at a disadvantage, and he was continuously vomiting blood. I'm not a roundworm in Ling Han's stomach. How would I know? Although White Rice was no match for Feng Wooding, his expression was still very carefree. He did not care and continued to fight. Would Feng Wooding dare to kill him? Just like how no one dared to kill Feng Wooding, no one dared to kill White Rice unless they could kill him perfectly. Otherwise, who in the world could escape from a 7-step expert's wrath? However, although Feng Wooding did not dare to kill White Rice, he could injure him severely and humiliate him. Even if White Rice knew about the grudges between juniors, would he have the face to look for Feng Wooding? Even if he did not care about his face, Heavenly Venerable Yen and the others were not to be trifled with. White Rice used all his trump cards, but he could not match up to Feng Wooding. He could only fight as he fled. What eternal prodigy? He's just trash. Feng Wooding smirked coldly. He had suffered greatly at Ling Han's hands, but among those of the same cultivation level, only Ling Han could suppress him. Against any other prodigy, he had the upper hand. Don't forget that you were almost beaten into a retard by my brother, White Rice mocked. Feng Wuding's face immediately darkened. The humiliation of his life came from Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. In the past, Bai Mi was such a nice person, full of sunshine. But now, she actually learned to have a poisonous tongue. Who knew who had influenced her? If the Empress and the others were present, they would definitely point at his nose and say, "It's you, it's you." White Rice tried to escape, but Feng Wuding was not the only one here. There were two other fifth-step experts from the World Alliance, and they tried to stop him. These two Step 5 cultivators were not stronger than White Rice, but they did not need to defeat White Rice. All they needed to do was stall him for a while and let Feng Wuding catch up. If Ling Han dares to appear again, I'll definitely teach him a lesson, said Feng Wuding coldly. He was currently at the 4th step, and his strength was incomparable to when he was at the 3rd step. He could absolutely sweep through all 5th step experts. Oh, how do you want to teach me? Ling Han smiled. He took a step forward and appeared beside Bai Mi. When they saw Ling Han, the two Step 5 cultivators from the World Alliance could not help but be shocked, and actually did not dare to make a move. The shadow in their hearts was too great. In the past, Ling Han had defeated 9 great 5th step elites from the World Alliance by himself. Now, there were only 2 of them, so what could they use to stop Ling Han? Ling Han. Bai Mi was startled. He had not thought that Ling Han would actually appear at such a crucial time. Ling Han, Feng Wuding said through gritted teeth. He was filled with hatred. Ling Han did not care and said, "We haven't seen each other for such a long time, and you've already advanced 4 steps. Looks like you've taken quite a lot of great medicine." Even if Feng Wuding's cultivation speed was astonishing, it was still impossible for him to advance 4 steps in just a few thousand years. He must have obtained a considerable amount of great medicine. Speaking of great medicine, Feng Wuding's expression darkened even further. He had already been dissuaded by Ling Han twice, and was still suppressing a bellyful of anger. "Ling Han, today, I'll let you experience what it means to be a son of destiny," he roared angrily and charged over. Ling Han casually threw out a punch, appearing to be at ease. "You've advanced 4 steps, but haven't I?" The slower his advancement was, the more terrifying his explosive power would be once he broke through. It was only a single punch, and Feng Wuding was sent flying, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. Battle prowess of level 6. Feng Wuding's face was deathly pale. Battle prowess of level 5. Even if it was the peak stage of level 5, so what? Forcibly taking on battle prowess of level 6 would only result in him being badly injured. His face was filled with disbelief. He had suffered 10,000 points of damage. Wasn't that right? He considered himself to be extraordinary, and was the son of destiny. But they were both in the early stage of level 4, and his battle prowess was only at the peak stage of level 5. Though he could sweep over all battle prowess of level 5, he was still very far away from level 6. But Ling Han had reached battle prowess of level 6, which was the real deal. With this comparison, wasn't the gap between the two of them obvious? But Feng Wuding could not accept this. If he had been suppressed by Ling Han when he was at level 3, then so be it, but now he was already at level 4. The higher the cultivation level, the greater the advantage he, the son of destiny, should be. Instead, it was Ling Han who had shaken him off. Could it be that he, the son of destiny, was just joking? Feng Wuding's pride could not accept this result. But no matter how monstrous he was, no matter how many powerful moves he used, his battle prowess of level 5 could not advance to level 6. The gap was as huge as the sky. It was just like how Ling Han was strong enough, but when he was at level 3, he could not advance his battle prowess to level 6 no matter what. He could only be beaten up, and very quickly his skin and flesh were split open. He looked like Bai Mi, good fight. Bai Mi applauded. At the same time, he was filled with shock. Ling Han's battle prowess was already at level 6, and he was just 1 step away from level 7. At that time, he would truly stand at the peak of the world, and he would not be restricted by anything. Ling Han only wanted to beat Feng Wuding up, but he did not want to kill him. Though he had a huge grudge with World Alliance, Feng Wuding had not done anything evil. It was just that it was very coincidental and very unfortunate that he had joined World Alliance. Furthermore, Feng Wuding was Ling Han's boy of wealth. This fellow had been heavily nurtured by World Alliance, and he had many treasures on him. He should be sheared like sheep, and Ling Han could not bear to kill him. Just as he was fighting to his heart's content, Ling Han suddenly felt 3 terrifying auras sweep over. 6 steps, 6 steps, 6 steps. While he was stunned, the 3 auras had already closed in, and 3 people appeared. He did not recognize any of them, and they were all extremely unfamiliar. There were over 100 level 6 in the origin world, and Ling Han had seen over 70 of them. It was normal that he did not recognize the 3 people in front of him. It was just that these 3 level 6 heavenly venerables gave him a strange feeling, but he could not tell what was wrong at the moment. The 3 level 6 heavenly venerables swept their gazes, and they immediately locked onto Ling Han. To be precise, they locked onto Ling Han and Feng Wuding. Seniors, please save Feng Wuding. He is a level 7. The 2 level 5 heavenly venerables from World Alliance hurriedly asked the 3 level 6 heavenly venerables for help. End of chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 2938. Puff. However, before the 2 5th step experts could finish, a 6th step expert attacked. One strike caused the 2 of them to spit out blood and were heavily injured. This was because they were 5th step experts. If they were 4th step experts, they would have been killed in 1 strike. Ling Han, White Rice, and Feng Wuding were shocked. What did these 3 mean? Seniors. The 2 5th step experts coughed out blood. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Why were they suddenly attacked like this? Ling Han's heart shook and he suddenly reacted. He said to White Rice, "You leave first." White Rice looked at him and was confused. He was a descendant of 7th step experts. Although the 3 of them were 6th step experts, they wouldn't dare to attack him. One had to know that he had a technique left behind by a 7th step expert. Once he died, White Rice would know everything. The higher one's realm was, the more they knew how terrifying a 7th step expert was. These 3 wouldn't dare to attack him. Fool, they are Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han shouted. He finally realized what was wrong with the 3 of them. They were Frenzy's creations and their auras were extremely strange. What? White Rice was astonished. If the 3 of them created things in a frenzy, then they didn't have to hold back at all. Since they were enemies, it didn't matter even if they killed all the descendants of the 7th step, let alone 1 descendant of 7th step. What about you? He asked Ling Han. I want to fight them. Ling Han was filled with fighting spirit. White Rice made a decision and ran. He ran, but the 3 cultivators at the 6th step level did not chase after him. They merely stared at Ling Han and Feng Wuding, and their auras gradually changed. At first, there was only a slightly gloomy and cold aura, but now it was completely unleashed, and it was filled with endless evil. At the same time, their bodies changed too. Some had a few more arms, some had legs, and one had 7 heads. Frenzy's creations had many unique traits. What was different was that their eyes were shining with wisdom. Without such intelligence, they wouldn't have been able to find this place. They would have been lost in the void. After such a long time, Frenzy finally attacked. Ling Han was filled with heroic spirit. He had just taken 4 steps forward and wanted to test his combat strength. He shook his right hand and knocked Feng Wuding out so that this fellow wouldn't cause trouble for him during the battle. He smiled faintly. Are you here to kill me or him? Feng Wuding was the chosen one of the previous generation's origin world. Perhaps Frenzy would also be wary of him. Who knew what secrets were hidden in this fellow's body? It might only be revealed at the 5th, 6th, or even 7th step, which would pose a threat to Frenzy. A 6th-step monster spoke in a hoarse voice, as if he had just learned how to speak. Ling Han pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Actually, I don't care whether this fellow lives or dies. But if Frenzy wants to kill him, I have to save him. He used his great power to shrink Feng Wuding's body into a small and put him away. Come. He crooked his finger at the 3 6th-step martial artists. The 3 monsters immediately charged over. Hong, Their terrifying combat strength surged as they crushed toward Ling Han. They were very strong, all at the peak of the 6th step. He believed that Frenzy had paid a huge price to create these 3 monsters. They were all at the peak of the 6th step. Clearly, they were going to succeed. Ling Han shook his head. If he had encountered these 3 monsters when he was still at the 3rd step, he definitely wouldn't have been a match for them. He could only immediately tear open the void and return. Otherwise, if he stayed for even a moment longer, he might die. Although Ling Han continuously used the energy storms here to delay and even caused the 3 6th-step monsters to suffer some losses, they did not care at all and continued to chase him closely. Frenzy remnants, take this. With a long cry, 2 figures charged over at the same time. Xan Chihu and Wu Haoyang. The 2 greatest prodigies of all time had obviously obtained great opportunities here, and their cultivations had already reached the peak of 5th step. But this was the true difficulty. Thinking about how they had all been stuck at 4th step for an epoch before finally advancing to 5th step, it could be imagined that without Crimson-grade great medicine, they might need 2, 3, or even more epochs to advance to 6th step. However, with cultivation at the peak of 5th step, coupled with their freaks, their battle prowess was absolutely terrifying. They charged over from the side, and just happened to intercept the 3 6th-step monsters. The 2 sides immediately began to fight, and the battle was incredibly intense. End of this chapter. Chapter 2940. Ling Han. Not long after Ling Han left, he saw White Rice run over. Phew, it's good that you're fine. He patted his chest. How was it? Did Xan Chihu go to save you? Ling Han was surprised. You asked Xan Chihu for help? I met Xan Chihu first and told him about the situation. Didn't he go to save you? White Rice was stunned. Ling Han shook his head. He came, along with Wu Haoyang. That's good. White Rice nodded. Ling Han was a little surprised. He didn't think that Xan Chihu would come to save him and teach him a good lesson. In another situation, if Xan Chihu was being chased by the Chaos Army, would he help? Ling Han thought for a moment and nodded slowly. No matter how big the conflict between him and Xan Chihu was, it was an internal problem. No matter who won, it wouldn't have any negative impact on the fiery frost plane. However, no matter what the Chaos Army did, as long as they succeeded, they would definitely harm the fiery frost plane. Internal competition was one thing, but there had to be a bottom line. Alright, he accepted this favor. If Xan Chihu fell into the Chaos Army's encirclement in the future, he would help. Come, let's continue digging. The 2 of them walked around, searching for mines and excavating raw stones. They had a great harvest. 100,000 years passed quickly, and it was time for the 2 of them to return. They stepped on the way back, and after asking, they found out that the 6 steps of the Chaos Army hadn't been discovered. They didn't know where they were hiding. If they didn't get rid of them, they would always be a hidden danger. Who knows where they'll pop up and kill us all of a sudden? They traveled through the void, and after a dozen years, the 2 of them returned to the foreign battlefield. Next, it was time for another group to explore the origin world. The Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming were in this group, but the Empress and Hun Yo had to wait. Lin Yulian also left. In other words, there was no one to protect Ling Han here, and Xan Chihu could do as he pleased. However, it was useless even if Lin Yulian didn't leave. Xan Chihu had obtained great benefits in the previous generation's Yuan world, and his strength had soared to the peak of 6th step, surpassing her. Sure enough, with no one to restrain him, Xan Chihu gave Ling Han many more difficult problems and made him go to the frenzy camp to continue the decapitation operation. Ling Han, on the other hand, didn't care. His battle prowess had already soared to 6 levels. In this place where cultivation levels were suppressed, he could easily kill his way through the frenzy army. Of course, he couldn't withstand the simultaneous bombardment of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of 5 steps. Apart from the 7 steps of undying and indestructible, even 6 steps would be blasted to smithereens. Now, he wasn't worried about encountering Frenzy in the void. With combat strength of level 6, even Frenzy's doppelganger wouldn't be able to kill him. At most, it would only injure him a little. Since that was the case, Ling Han happily accepted the order and entered the frenzy camp to kill. Killing these monsters couldn't provide him with life essence, but the plain power in Ling Han's body was like a millstone. When he refined and attacked, he could also turn a portion of the power into nourishment for him. It should be known that the most difficult thing for Ling Han to improve his cultivation was the growth of the infinite plain power in his body. Now that these plain seeds could absorb nourishment on their own, this naturally made Ling Han happy. He distributed the great medicine and heavenly venerable symbols he had obtained from the previous origin world to the Empress and the others. Of course, there was also a portion of white rice. Before this area was completely neutralized, the frenzy army obviously wouldn't launch an attack. This was also a rare opportunity for everyone to improve their own strength. Apart from fighting, Ling Han was also constantly cultivating in seclusion. Although the heavenly venerable symbols he had obtained from the previous origin world were getting fewer and fewer, the number of symbols he had mastered had reached more than 300. Under the operation of all of them, his cultivation speed increased by almost 2,000 times. Without needing to care about the plain power in his body, Ling Han's cultivation naturally improved. He was expected to reach the peak of level 4 within 200 to 300 million years. On the other hand, the plain seed in his body that had evolved into a plain seed was also developing rapidly. 100,000 years later, the second group returned, and the third group set off. The Empress and Hunyou were among them. Ling Han warned the two women to be careful, while he continued to go to the frenzy camp to fight and improve his plain power. Only 700,000 years later, the plain in Ling Han's body completely caught up with his cultivation level. He was still in the early stage of level 4. If there were 100 steps between the early stage and middle stage of level 4, he had now taken about 2 steps. However, although he had only taken this little step, it increased the upper limit of the number of planes he could accommodate again, reaching more than 200. Now these planes had all reached the medium level, close to the high level. If they were all released in one go, even if it was just a projection, it would be very shocking. The Empress and Hunyou had already returned, and after 1 million years, it was finally Ling Han's turn to go to the previous origin world. But before they set off, they had to postpone the plan. That was because the frenzy army finally launched an attack. An endless army charged over, the densely packed numbers making one's scalp numb. However, Ling Han did not care at all. He took the initiative to charge out, releasing 20 plane projections in one go. Now, these planes were all close to the high level, and even those in the 5th step would be slightly affected, while those in the 4th step would directly collapse. Ling Han shot out a punch, and instantly, thousands of frenzy army soldiers were crushed. Seeing him so violent and strong, everyone was shocked, but also filled with excitement. With a prodigy like Ling Han overseeing things, what was the frenzy army worth? Not only Ling Han, but Xen Chihu, Wu Haoyang, and Lin Yulian also displayed world-shaking strength. Although Feng Wuding was repeatedly robbed by Ling Han and appeared extremely weak, in reality he was indeed a prodigy second only to Ling Han. His cultivation level had advanced frighteningly, already reaching the middle stage of level 4. Although his battle prowess had not advanced into level 6, he could already sweep away all those in level 5. It had to be said that the previous origin world had really helped them a lot. In this battle, although the fiery frost dimension did not have the help of plane suppression, because of Ling Han, Xen Chihu, and the other prodigies, they had played the role of stabilizing the sea, and they had actually managed to defend their position. Although they had paid the price of more than 100 heavenly venerables dying in battle and more than 2,000 people being seriously injured, this great victory still made everyone feel satisfied and strong confidence. Finally, they could not only retreat, but they could also stand firm. After this great victory, everyone hurriedly took the time to rest and reorganize. Now that they had not given up their position, it meant that the frenzy army might launch an attack soon. Ling Han's journey could only be postponed indefinitely, so he could not leave now. Sure enough, after a few years, the frenzy army attacked again, but they were forced back. In the past, there were only 3 generals, including Xen Chihu. Now, with the addition of 2 people with battle prowess at level 6, Ling Han and Feng Wuding, they had a huge impact on the battle situation. Chapter 2941. In the next 100 years, the army of chaos launched a total of more than 30 attacks, large and small. However, all of them were repelled and could not take another step forward. In these battles, Feng Wuding's performance was the most outstanding. He seemed to want to prove to everyone that only he could defeat the Chaos Army and become the savior of the Yuan world. He went all out in every battle, using his ultimate moves. In the most recent battle, he released 21 planar projections, surpassing the 20 that Ling Han had displayed before. Clearly, he was holding back his anger and wanted to prove that he was better than Ling Han. Ling Han naturally didn't care about this. This kind of competition was the stupidest thing. Strength was the way to go. For 200 years, 500 years, they had defended against the Chaos Army's countless attacks. In the blink of an eye, 1,000,000 years had passed. Ling Han would still carry out beheading operations. Even if they could withstand the Chaos Army's attacks, the Flame Frost Army's casualty rate would be completely different without an intelligent monster to command them. He would bring White Rice, Xian Feng, and Fu Yuan along. With his current strength, he could already guarantee their safety. He naturally didn't mind training them. Feng Wuding was always going against Ling Han. He also formed a beheading team and brought 3 members to kill their way into the enemy's camp. He wanted to compete with Ling Han. However, he didn't have the ability to travel through space. There were a few times when he was surrounded. Although he managed to escape, his 3 teammates all died inside. After a few times, even if he was the previous Yuan world's child of destiny, no celestial venerables were willing to risk their lives with him. Feng Wuding could only fight alone. However, once he was trapped in the enemy's camp, he was saved by Ling Han, Xan Chihu, and the other 2 generals. After that, he never fought his way into the enemy's camp again. It was too embarrassing. Haha. When this news spread, White Rice, Xian Feng, and Fu Yuan laughed. They had long been unhappy with Feng Wuding. Now that he had made a fool of himself, they were naturally happy. "You want to compete with us? You'll be slapped in the face, right?" said White Rice. He had been defeated by Feng Wuding, and he had been holding his breath the entire time. However, he didn't have an advantage in terms of cultivation realm. In a battle of the same realm, he wasn't Feng Wuding's opponent. "Come on, let's drink." Fu Yuan raised his cup. Ling Han and the other 2 also raised their wine cups. Then they clinked. This was not a camp, but a 3-day journey away. Originally, it was an ordinary valley, but now that the 2 plains had collided, it formed a very spectacular landscape. This was discovered by White Rice, so he brought them here to admire it. Since Feng Wuding was here, they decided to drink and enjoy themselves. But then again, Feng Wuding is indeed powerful. If it weren't for Boss, no one in the same realm would be a match for him, Xian Feng said seriously. White Rice and Fu Yuan nodded. They had to admit that. There's nothing we can do about it. He was born at the wrong time to meet our boss. Fu Yuan laughed. Even though Fu Yuan and Xian Feng were both at the 5th step, they were willing to acknowledge Ling Han as their boss. Martial art depended on one's realm, but it also depended on one's strength. Wait for our boss to improve further. After he reaches the 5th step, he will have the combat strength of a 7th step, and no one in the world will be a match for him, Fu Yuan said. Although this was considered flattery, it was also the truth. Ling Han wanted to say something, but he tilted his head and listened attentively. "What's wrong?" White Rice asked. Ling Han waved his hand and signaled for everyone to keep quiet. After a while, he said calmly, "We have guests." Chapter 2944. As Ling Han walked, he saw that the people he passed all looked at him strangely, as if he was a monster, and some people didn't even hide the disgust in their eyes. "Fuck, did I provoke you?" Ling Han and the Empress were fine, but Hu Niu directly glared back. What, did they think she didn't know how to glare? "Boss." Ling Han. "Fourth brother." Xian Feng, the Rain Emperor, and the others all ran over, their expressions very serious. "What's wrong?" Ling Han said with a smile. "If the sky falls down, even if the sky falls down, I'll help you guys hold it up." He was now in the 6th level of battle prowess, so he really had the right to say such words. "Boss, something really happened." Xian Feng said anxiously, pausing for a moment before explaining the situation. The matter of you being related to madness has been exposed by someone, and it's spreading everywhere now. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, and he also became serious. There weren't many people who knew that he was once chosen by madness. Aside from his wives, there were only White Rice, Xian Feng, and Zhou Heng, but Ling Han could guarantee that none of them would leak the secret. Then who could it be? It could only be madness's subordinates, like Huangfu Dongyue. Sometimes, to eliminate a person, one didn't need to do it himself. Not only was killing with a borrowed knife equally effective, but it also saved effort. It must be these people who spread the news, alienating the relationship between Ling Han and the public, and even attracting the hostility of many people who would attack him. At that time, Ling Han would become a man on both sides, and would be hunted by both sides. Taking a step back, being hunted by his own people, would Ling Han be discouraged? Even if Ling Han knew that this was madness's plot, facing the ugly faces of some people, he would still be furious, and then disappointed in the entire group, right? To what extent, madness actually wouldn't care too much. Anyway, what it had to do was to let Huangfu Dongyue and the others spread the news, and it didn't cost anything. Ling Han instantly went through it in his mind, but had to say that madness's move was very ruthless. He was certain that he would never listen to frenzy, but how many of the others would believe him? Ling Han came from afar alone. He first glanced at Ling Han with disdain and said, "The four marshals have summoned you for a meeting." "Here it comes." Ling Han felt extremely displeased. This person was Feng Wuding's subordinate, and he also came from the previous Yuan world. His strength was quite extraordinary, and he had already reached the third step. He was quite monstrous. But how could Ling Han care about 3 steps? "I'm one of the commanders of the Allied army, yet you're calling me by my name. Are you trying to go against your superiors?" Ling Han coldly stared at him. No matter what happened next, no matter how this matter was resolved, he would not allow his dignity to be trampled on. People needed a bottom line. The third step Celestial Venerable didn't think that Ling Han would make things difficult for him. In his opinion, Ling Han should be extremely panic-stricken with the East Window incident, so where did he get the confidence to rebuke him? He wanted to be arrogant, but facing Ling Han, who was at the 6th step, his heart was beating like a drum, and his courage instantly disappeared. He hesitated for a moment, then cupped his fists and bowed. "I don't dare." "What's the matter?" Ling Han asked indifferently. "Don't you know everything? Why are you still pretending to be ignorant?" However, the third step Celestial had just been intimidated by Ling Han, so he didn't dare to talk back to Ling Han. He could only pinch his nose and say, "Lord Ling, the 4 commanders are waiting for you in the meeting hall." "That's more like it," White Rice said coldly. He had always disliked Feng Wuding, and since he was the grandson of 7th Step Celestial Venerable, he naturally spoke without thinking. The 3rd Step Celestial Venerable immediately wanted to glare at him, but he remembered that White Rice was the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Though he wasn't as strong as Feng Wuding, he was many times stronger than him. If he took the initiative to provoke him, then he deserved to be crippled. A small fry should have the awareness of a small fry. "Why are you rushing forward? Do you want to be cannon fodder?" The Rain Emperor said calmly. The 3rd Step Celestial Venerable couldn't afford to provoke Ling Han's group, so he could only keep quiet. In any case, what awaited Ling Han was a trial, and he would suffer. He indeed didn't need to rush forward. "Lord Ling, please." He made a gesture of invitation. Ling Han ignored him completely. Though he started walking, he wasn't heading in the direction of the meeting hall. "Lord Ling." The 3rd Step Celestial Venerable hurriedly rushed over to stop him. Peng the Empress moved and delivered a palm strike. Instantly, the 3rd Step Celestial Venerable was sent flying. He created a deep pit on the ground. She had long since advanced to the 4th step, and had the power of 100 existential levels in her body. Even if she couldn't cross a cultivation level now, she had an additional cultivation level. Wouldn't she be able to crush him? Ling Han's steps paused slightly. "I just rushed back and need to rest. You want to interfere with this?" "Your subordinate doesn't dare." The 3rd Step Celestial Venerable could only swallow his pride and anger. He lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred. He was a third-step celestial venerable, a third-step celestial venerable that stood at the peak of the world. Ling Han smiled and continued to walk forward. Want to put him on trial? He had a clear conscience, so who could put him on trial and sentence him? He returned to his own residence, and the Rain Emperor and the others hurriedly asked if Ling Han had any countermeasures. Countermeasures? Ling Han smiled and said, counter-soldiers with arms, and water with an earth weir. Fourth brother, what exactly is going on? The Rain Emperor asked. He had also heard from others that Ling Han was related to madness. Thus, Ling Han recounted the matter of him being the person chosen by frenzy, and did not hide anything. So Lord Zhou and Lord Lin already know. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Even Lord Sixth-Step Celestial Venerable already knew about this, so it would definitely be easy to resolve. Tomorrow, it should just be a formality. Lord Zhou and Lord Chu aren't at the ordinary sixth step. They are only a sliver away from the seventh step, and can cross over at any time. Perhaps they are already at the seventh step now. They only need to say something and it will definitely work. But we still have to be careful. Someone might take the opportunity to cause trouble and slander little Han, the large black dog said. If someone is, then it must be under the command of Xian Chihu or Feng Wooding. Otherwise, who would have the guts to do so? White Rice asked. Everyone nodded. The ones who would use this matter to make things difficult for Ling Han were probably Xian Chihu and Feng Wooding. The day passed quickly, and it was very peaceful. Xian Chihu and the others didn't send anyone to invite Ling Han, but everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. The calmer it was now, the more terrifying the storm would be in the future. On the second day, Ling Han didn't need anyone to invite him, and he strode towards the conference hall. Whoever wanted to make things difficult for him, he would take it all on. When he arrived at the conference hall, he saw that there were already many people here, and Lin Yu Lian, Xian Chihu, and the others were sitting on the main seats. A good show was about to begin. End of this chapter. You want to stay out of this? He said coldly. Then do you have proof that you're not Insanity's subordinate? Then do you have proof that I'm Insanity's subordinate? Ling Han countered with a question. Fuck. Feng Wooding couldn't help but choke. Was he interrogating him now, or was he interrogating him? Ling Han, don't try to quibble. He shouted loudly. Quibble your sister. Ling Han snorted. Did you call me over for no reason just to tease me? Are you crazy? Even if I'm really related to Insanity, I'll admit it right here. Also, now I suspect that you're related to Insanity. Do you have proof to prove your innocence? Ling Han countered with a question, his voice powerful. You're trying to slander me. Feng Wooding immediately jumped up. Ling Han chuckled. I haven't even said that you're slandering me. What are you so excited about? Ling Han. Feng Wooding gritted his teeth. He really wanted to charge out. Seeing him like this, and then comparing it to Ling Han's calmness, everyone shook their heads. Although Feng Wooding was the child of destiny of the last origin world, his temperament really hadn't been cultivated to perfection. Ling Han laughed loudly. What? You want to fight? Ling Han. Xian Chihu finally spoke up. There's no smoke without fire. You can't solve the problem by simply shifting the blame. Furthermore, if you don't get to the bottom of this matter, who else would believe you and fight alongside you? These words had a certain level of quality to them. They stood at the height of righteousness, and Ling Han could no longer respond with shameless tactics. Ling Han smiled faintly. Oh, how do you want me to prove that if I'm refined by you guys, will I change back to my original form? According to the countless years of experience that the Lords of the Seventh Step have had with Insanity's main body, Insanity has the ability to devour life essence. This is also the fundamental reason why it was able to catch up from behind and become the strongest of the seventh step, Xian Chihu said. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han. As long as you also have this ability, then you're definitely related to Insanity. He didn't directly insist that Ling Han was part of Insanity, but as long as he could prove that Ling Han was related to Insanity, then it would only be a matter of time before Ling Han was nailed to the pillar of shame. Comparing Exan Chihu and Feng Wuding, one could see how shrewd and ruthless Exan Chihu was, while Feng Wuding was simply like a child. Come. Exan Chihu waved his hand. Immediately, a person was brought over. His cultivation had been sealed, and he was only an immortal king at the 8th heaven. But Exan Chihu moved like lightning, and with one palm, he blasted that immortal king into pieces. Everyone was shocked. Although this was only an immortal king at the 8th heaven, which was basically trash in their eyes, suddenly killing someone and seeing blood still made their nerves tremble. This is an immortal king who committed a great crime. His death is not to be regretted, Exan Chihu explained. Everyone, carefully observe that life essence. Chapter 2946. Ling Han was a little depressed. Devouring life essence to increase his cultivation was an amazing and practical ability, but he couldn't control it at all. At this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on his body. Even those who were doubtful before had changed, revealing looks of disgust. Everyone despised Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han, what else do you have to say? Feng Wuding said proudly. Ling Han shrugged. So what? It's just a coincidence. How can it be a coincidence? Feng Wuding snorted. Why don't I have such an ability? How would I know? You're an idiot, Ling Han said casually. Do. Feng Wuding went berserk again. Exan Chihu waved his hand. Ling Han, you're one of our generals. We won't make a judgment so easily. However, this is a serious matter. You must cooperate with us. Right now, we want you to surrender. As for whether you're a frenzy member or not, the 7th step lords will judge. Ling Han looked at Exan Chihu. This guy was really cunning. He wanted to take me down, but he made it sound so nice. It was as if he was thinking for me. Everyone. Lin Yulien said, those who say that Ling Han is related to the frenzy, have you ever thought about how many frenzy soldiers Ling Han has killed up until now? If he really is a member of the frenzy, why would he do such a thing? Quite a few people immediately nodded. Ling Han had killed who knew how many members of the frenzy army these years, and at least 1/3 of the intelligence-type monsters had died in his hands. Otherwise, their current front line would definitely have to retreat an immeasurable distance. If one were to say that Ling Han was a traitor, this was really too unbelievable. Otherwise, how could he have won our trust? Na Lan Xiong interrupted. That's right. The reason why he did this must be because he's plotting something huge. The damage to the Frosty Plain and the Origin World is far greater than the destruction of the Frenzy Army, someone added. Furthermore, if it weren't for this layer of relationship, how could he have been able to move about freely in the Frenzy Army? Someone else said. Even if it was Lord Xian, Lord Lin, and Lord Wu, these three are all stronger than Ling Han, they still couldn't have done it. Let me ask you, if Ling Han could do it once, it would be fine. But he has come and gone thousands of times. Is there really nothing the Frenzy Army can do to him? Yeah. Everyone nodded their heads. Ling Han was indeed a monstrous genius, but to be honest, his battle prowess was still slightly inferior to that of Lin, Xian, and Wu. How could Ling Han be able to do something that even the three of them could not? Not just once, but thousands and tens of thousands of times? Who would believe that there was no ghost in it? That's right. How did Ling Han do it? They must be working together from the inside and purposely going easy on us. Anyway, the Frenzy Army has a lot of people. It doesn't matter how many of them die. It won't be long before they can create a new army. Damn it. If Ling Han continues killing like this, his reputation will definitely increase. If he really becomes our leader, we will definitely die without a burial place. Everyone was talking at once, and everyone was in an uproar. White Rice and Shen Feng were both furious. They were members of the execution team, and they had experienced many dangers before. Didn't they see it? There was indeed a traitor, but it was Fu Yuan. They argued on Ling Han's behalf, but their voices were immediately drowned out by the boiling sound of cursing. Ling Han was not angry. This scene was actually within his expectations. He just looked at Exan Chihu. He had fought with Exan Chihu many times, and Exan Chihu was one of the few who knew his trump card. Fu Yuan could tear space and travel freely between planes, so it was a piece of cake for him to come and go freely in the Frenzy Army. If he could transform one more time, he would be able to take 7 steps and become the strongest in the world. This was an incomparably strong opponent, and even Zhou Heng didn't dare say he could win for sure. This was because his opponent was also an outstanding person who was 1 step away from reaching 7 steps. The reason why Empyrean Golden Silkworm looked so old was because he cultivated the Golden Silkworm transformation. If he really died of old age, his corpse would form a cocoon, and what would break out of it would be his 7 transformations body. Thus, the older he looked, the more terrifying his strength was. I agree. Capture this child and search his soul, said Empyrean Golden Silkworm. Zhou Heng suppressed the anger in his heart and said, the knowledge sea is extremely important, but it is also very fragile. If we search his soul, it will inevitably hurt Ling Han and affect his future development. So what? Isn't it only right to eliminate the remnants of madness? Yu Borong interrupted. Should your sister? Ling Han wanted to retort, but when he saw Zhou Heng's eyes, he could only suppress it. We can't say anything. We can only ask Lord 7 Steps to decide. Zhou Heng used his trump card. Not every 6 steps had a 7-step behind them. At least, Yu Borong, Empyrean Golden Silkworm, and Empyrean Myriad Shadows didn't have one. Zhou Heng's strange signal only lasted for an instant before he felt an incomparably terrifying pressure descend. The 7 steps had arrived. Naturally, it was Lin Luo. He was only an avatar, but with the strength of a 7 steps, his avatar could suppress most 6 steps experts. If Lin Luo's true body was here, even the special environment here wouldn't be able to suppress him. The 7 steps had completely transcended heaven and earth, and he could display his full strength no matter where he was. Even the higher planes couldn't do anything to him. But now, it was only an avatar, and it couldn't be so powerful. His realm was still suppressed to the 5 steps. Greetings, Lord Lin. Everyone bowed, including Zhou Heng and Empyrean Myriad Shadows. The 7 steps represented heaven and earth, the principles, and everything. Lin Luo nodded, but just as he was about to speak, he paused. Another terrifying aura descended. 1, 2, 3, all of them were avatars of 7 steps experts. Xen Fu Chong Yen Poi. Brother Lin, we should capture this child, said Xen Fu. Ling Han cursed in his heart. Then he looked at Xen Chihu. Xen Fu might have been summoned by Xen Chihu. Lin Luo glanced at them and said, I think that Ling Han is very likely to be the one who will completely pacify the chaos in the future. So, we should have absolute trust in him and help him advance to the 7th step as soon as possible. After reaching the 7 steps, you will help madness attack us? Chong Yen sneered. He and Lin Luo came from 2 different eras, 2 different origin worlds. He had no respect for Lin Luo at all. There's no need to say any more. There's already someone who can eliminate madness. It's Feng Wuding, he said loudly, as if he wanted to give Feng Wuding a proper name. It was fine to lose to Ling Han, but that was because Ling Han was someone from madness. Actually, thinking about it, it was very funny. If Ling Han was really someone from madness, then he could defeat Feng Wuding. How could Feng Wuding defeat madness? Oh, he couldn't even deal with someone else's underlings, but he could kill an even more amazing boss. What a joke. I think we should kill him, Chong Yen said coldly. End of chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. What will you become in the future? I can't let you live. Empyrean Sundermount's expression also changed slightly, but he didn't feel any shame for bullying the weak, nor did he feel any regret for not being able to kill a 4th step cultivator. 7th step was the greatest in the world. What did he need to care about? In his eyes, there was only the thought of achieving his goal. He charged over again, each of his attacks sharp. He wanted to kill Ling Han on the spot. Ling Han roared, and his heavenly venerate symbols revolved. He unleashed a furious fist, clashing head-on with Empyrean Sundermount. He was filled with boundless rage. He was innocent, so why did he have to suffer such treatment? Were they all blind? Didn't they see the contributions he had made to the Flames Now plane over the years? Some people were intentionally ignoring him, wanting to erase him from existence. This was nothing more than jealousy or a personal grudge. Hateful, shameful, short-sighted. It was no wonder that the previous generation of the Origin world could only fight to the point where both sides suffered. The entire Origin world was destroyed, but it only heavily injured Madness. It didn't solve the root of this disaster. What about this generation? Ling Han might be able to deal with Madness in the future, but if he was killed now, then there would be no future. Taking a step back, even if his soul was searched, there wouldn't be any problems. But what if he was injured in the process? The spiritual sea was incomparably important, and it was related to the limits of one's future growth. If he was injured, it would be equivalent to destroying Ling Han's future. Old bastard, should I step on your grandfather's ancestral grave, or should I kill your father? Ling Han cursed as he fought. He was too angry, and he wouldn't feel good if he didn't curse. Don't think that you're indestructible. When I reach the 7th step, I'll suppress you in the latrine pit and let your name go down in history. Empyrean Sundermount was at the 7th step, and his temperament was like an ancient well. It was impossible for him to be affected. Why was that? He was too powerful. Firstly, no one dared to be impudent in front of him. Secondly, even if they were impudent, he could kill them with a single slap. There was no chance for him to be angry. However, he was only a clone now, and his cultivation was suppressed. No matter what, he couldn't suppress Ling Han. This made him angrier, and his eyebrows twitched. How could there be such a hateful brat? His mouth was too poisonous. However, Ling Han's ultimate moves made Empyrean Sundermount feel helpless. He was only a clone, and he couldn't use all the abilities of the main body, such as the Empyrean symbol. If it was in the outside world, he could use his cultivation to suppress Ling Han, but here, he was only slightly stronger than the 6th step. He was far from being able to suppress Ling Han. Seeing that Sundermount couldn't take down Ling Han, Empyrean Chong Yen couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. This brat was going to defy the heavens. Chapter 2950. At the very least, Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone wouldn't be able to block it. At the very least, Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone wouldn't be able to block it. After all, this was just a clone, and its cultivation level had been suppressed. It would be a miracle if it could match up to Ling Han's explosive power. Bang! Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone was instantly sent flying. His body trembled, and light flashed, making him seem illusory. This was because his clone had been formed from the intrinsic power of his origin world. It wasn't a body of flesh and blood, so it naturally wouldn't vomit blood. But now that it had suffered such a heavy blow, its body had almost collapsed. To Empyrean Sunderpeak, whether his clone was destroyed or not didn't matter at all. But the problem was that he had come with all his might, but it had been destroyed by a puny 4th step cultivator. That would be a huge joke. Thus, Empyrean Sunderpeak roared, his body glowing as he forcibly stabilized it. This clone was formed from a single strand of his divine will condensed from 6 kinds of intrinsic power. The key was his divine will. Now that his divine will had collapsed, it was naturally impossible for him to condense these powers together again. Brat, you dare act so viciously! He charged back at Ling Han. But in the face of Ling Han's 1,000-fold explosion of power, he didn't have any Empyrean symbols to use. How could he block it? Bang bang bang. He was continuously sent flying by Ling Han. Everyone watched with their eyes wide open, and a strong sense of surrealism rose in their hearts. That was a 7th step cultivator. Even if it was just a clone, it shouldn't be this weak. Fierce your sister. I'm going to beat you up. Ling Han roared. He knew that even if he destroyed Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone, it wouldn't cause him any harm. But he could still give him a vicious slap. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. Old 8th King, are you trying to bully me just because you're a 7-step cultivator? Come, let's see how you bully me now. Everyone was dumbfounded. The 7th-step cultivator, who was invincible and omnipotent in their eyes, had actually been defeated one day. No matter what the reason was, a defeat was a defeat. Ling Han, I'll fight you. Feng Wuding roared and charged over. You're not worthy of Lord 7th Step. This was naturally to help Empyrean Sunderpeak regain some face. But who was blind? Could it be that Empyrean Sunderpeak had been blasted to such a miserable state? Empyrean Sundermount naturally disdained to join forces with Feng Wuding. He wanted to retreat, but Ling Han wouldn't let him go. He just kept chasing after him, punching out without end. Now, Ling Han was fighting 1 against 2. It was just that he wasn't fighting Feng Wuding at all. Everyone was even more speechless now. Even with Feng Wuding's help, Empyrean Poyu was still being suppressed. This was a resounding slap to the face. Feng Wuding was very strong, but Ling Han was even stronger. He activated 100 planes to suppress Feng Wuding. It was not a projection, but a real plane. Feng Wuding couldn't help but tremble. One had to know that his limit was 100 planes, but he had only nurtured 92 of them. Where's Ling Han? Even if this was Ling Han's limit, he would still be able to fight evenly with Empyrean Poyu. He was extremely arrogant, and his greatest trump card was these 100 planes. But now, Ling Han had easily beaten him to a draw. How could he not be dazed? Was he really the child of destiny from the previous generation's origin world? Old bastard, die! Ling Han punched out furiously. He wanted to blow his opponent up in a single breath, not giving him a chance to reform his body. Little brat, little brat. Empyrean Sundermount also roared angrily, but there was nothing he could do. His body trembled violently, and with a bang he finally collapsed. Everyone was shocked. They almost didn't dare to believe their eyes. 7th step was invincible. That was something that was deeply ingrained in everyone's minds. But now, he had suddenly collapsed. Although it could be said that Ling Han had joined forces with the suppression of heaven and earth to destroy Empyrean Sundermount's clone, everyone chose to ignore it. All they knew was that a 7th-step clone had been destroyed by a 4th-step clone. In another space of the extraterritorial battlefield. This place was dark, silent, and seemed like a void. But here, the 10 most powerful people of the entire origin world were engaged in an intense battle. Their opponents didn't reveal their incarnations. Instead, countless tentacles were constantly lashing out, each one emitting boundless power. Even a 6th-step powerhouse would be slain in a single blow. This was the battlefield where the 10 7th-step powerhouses fought against the main body of madness. It was also because of them that madness was unable to focus more on creation, reducing the pressure on the other 2 layers. This was especially true when Chong Yen and the other 7th-step powerhouses had joined the battle hundreds of millions of years ago. Although they hadn't been able to change their disadvantageous situation, they had still played an incomparably important role. However, an earth-shattering roar suddenly rang out from this place. Empyrean Sundermount's entire body emitted boundless light. Even the heavens and earth were about to crawl under his feet. His anger had turned into something tangible. Bang, bang, bang. Space shattered. Brat! His eyes emitted a cold light. His clone had been destroyed, so he naturally received feedback immediately. This made him extremely angry. He was a 7th step. 7th step. No, he had to personally move out and kill that brat. Fellow Taoist Sundermount, calm down. Lin Luo said. Don't forget our duties. Empyrean Sundermount was unable to restrain his anger. That brat dared to destroy my clone. How can I let him off? This was too embarrassing. He was a 7th step powerhouse. Chong Yen frowned. This brat's potential is astonishing. If he acts as an accomplice, who can stop him? We have to kill him now. Empyrean Big Dipper said coldly. Xian Yu and Half Moon nodded. They were both from the previous origin world, so they naturally had the same opinion. I definitely don't agree, Lin Luo immediately said. I don't agree either. Bai Fan shook his head. Wu Jihong also shook his head and did not say anything. The Firefrost Plains 4th 7th step powerhouse, Empyrean Blood Rainbow, also expressed that he did not agree to kill Ling Han. Brother Exen, what do you say? Empyrean Chong Yen looked at Exen Fu. He believed that Exen Fu had the same opinion as them and would definitely agree to kill Ling Han. Then, 6 against 4 would naturally be a foregone conclusion. Exen Fu muttered to himself for a moment and said, I don't agree. He needed to spend a large amount of time to strengthen these dimensions to their current limit. As long as there was a slight increase, Ling Han's battle prowess would also increase a little. In the blink of an eye, more than 4 million years had passed. Ling Han's cultivation level had indeed increased, but he had not even reached the late stage of the 4th step. There were too few origin stone mines here, and with the terrifying amount of energy he needed to advance, he could not support them at all. His advancement was indeed faster because of this, but there was a limit to how fast it was. It could not be helped. The deeper he went into this group of dimensions, the harsher the environment was, and the more broken the heaven and earth was, the fewer Empyrean stones there were. However, although there were fewer origin stones, the value of the goods was higher, and there were even symbols of 4th-rate Empyrean stones. Perhaps if he went deeper into the lower dimensions, there might be symbols of 3rd-rate, 2nd-rate, or even 1st-rate. Ling Han was suddenly startled. He sensed a few auras rapidly approaching him. He did not immediately break through the void and leave. Although these auras were powerful, they were far from reaching the 7th step. He was not afraid of anyone below the 7th step. Swish, swish, swish. Very quickly, 11 people appeared in front of Ling Han. It was actually somewhat inappropriate to say that there were 11 people, because 8 of them were indeed humans, but the other 3 were monsters with many legs, many hands, and many heads. 3 frenzied creations, plus Huangfu Dongyue and the other 8 spies. Ling Han, now that you have been abandoned by everyone in the origin world, you should return to the main body. Huangfu Dongyue said, we are all on the same side, and we have the main body's spiritual imprint. I wonder how much nobler we are compared to those weak living beings. As long as you renounce darkness and seek the light, the main body can completely forgive your crimes. Ling Han laughed heartily. All right, I will renounce darkness and seek the light now. Then, follow us back to the main body. The main body has something to say to you face to face. Huangfu Dongyue said. Ling Han scoffed. I am not under the control of the frenzy, and my battle prowess is even more outstanding, far surpassing its imagination. It can't sit still anymore, right? What talk to my face? It only wants to kill me and then study my corpse. Ling Han, why do you have to do this? Huangfu Dongyue continued to persuade him. Don't forget how the people in the origin world treated you. Ling Han nodded. I haven't forgotten who caused me to be in this state. Hee, we are just telling the truth. Huangfu Dongyue laughed. Ling Han, you have no way out. Now all the 7th step experts are chasing after you. As long as they find you, you will only have one path, death. Your future is so bright, why do you have to hang yourself on the tree of the origin world? Can they see your grievances? Will they sympathize with you? Ling Han laughed heartily. I haven't seen you for millions of years. I didn't expect your eloquence to grow. Go back and tell Frenzy to wash its neck. I will personally chop off its head. Ling Han, Frenzied might have several heads. Which neck do you want it to wash? Hunyou said with a grin. Ling Han nodded. Hearing the conversation between the two, Huangfu Dongyue didn't speak anymore. Obviously, Ling Han's will was very firm, and it was impossible for him to persuade him. Then he could only use force. He sighed. This was the worst plan, because Ling Han could freely travel between planes, and it was too difficult to stop him. You don't listen to the main body's call, and will eventually be destroyed by the main body's radiance. Chapter 2953. Ling Han laughed loudly. What bullshit glory, show it to me. 3 6-step monsters charged over, each with their full strength, trying to give Ling Han enough pressure so that he wouldn't have the time to tear open space and escape. Unfortunately, after millions of years, though Ling Han's cultivation level didn't improve much, his strength increased greatly. Though he still couldn't match the peak stage of 6-step, it wasn't that he didn't have the power to resist. He was at a disadvantage, but he didn't have to worry about his life at all. At least, not in the short term. Capture them. Huangfu Dongyue waved his hand, leading the remaining 7 to charge at Hunyou and the Empress. Ling Han obviously wouldn't let them succeed, and forcefully broke out of the encirclement, taking the Empress and Hu Niu into the Immortal Visitor Inn. He stood proudly. "If you want to fight, I'll keep you company. Ling Han, you're treacherous, and only death awaits you," Huang Fu Dongyue said. "Noisy." Ling Han snorted and threw a punch at him. Huang Fu Dongyue obviously couldn't block it, but with the 3 6-step monster's help, Ling Han's attack was neutralized. "What's the point?" Huang Fu Dongyue said with a smile. "As long as you return to your main body, you'll obtain inconceivable power and make those who humiliated you bow at your feet." He obviously didn't really want to persuade Ling Han to surrender, but deliberately disturbed Ling Han's mind. Even if Ling Han was only listening to his words, it would have a slight effect on Ling Han's battle prowess. He was already at a disadvantage, and this slight effect was also huge. Ling Han's heart was as cold as ice, and he only waved his fists to resist. From time to time, he would release more than 200 planes, forming a terrifying pressure that even the 3 6-step monsters would be affected to a certain extent. If Ling Han used these planes as weapons to directly attack, the 3 6-step monsters would have nothing to fear, and it would only take a little effort to shatter these planes. But now, it was only used as a deterrent, but it gave them a headache. From time to time, it would be released and then retracted, causing their attacks to be distorted and their reactions to slow down. In fact, it had a huge impact. This also allowed Ling Han to continue to persevere. Otherwise, no matter how monstrous he was, it would be impossible for him to fight against 3 peak 6-step experts, let alone 3. However, no matter what, the 3 6-step martial artists still had the upper hand in terms of strength. Soon, Ling Han was surrounded by danger, and wounds appeared on his body. "I'm done playing," Ling Han said in his heart. He could have run away a long time ago, but in order to test his combat strength, he decided to fight a little longer. If they continued to fight, it would no longer be a test of strength, but a death sentence. As Ling Han ran, the 3 big steps 6 steps gave chase. Both sides ran extremely fast, the endless mountains and rivers behind them, but interestingly, they would stop from time to time, because a terrifying energy storm appeared in front of them, forcing them to stop. If they forced their way through, even a 6th-step martial artist would be heavily injured. The energy storm did not bias, sometimes stopping Ling Han, and sometimes stopping the 3 big steps 6 steps 6 steps. Overall, it was quite fair, so the distance between the two sides never increased. Ling Han. Just as Ling Han was running happily, he saw a person suddenly appear in front of him. Xen Chihu. Without another word, he directly attacked Ling Han. Boom, the combat strength of a peak 6th-step martial artist erupted, and this attack was extremely terrifying. Ling Han had no choice but to parry. Exchanging blows with Xen Chihu caused his body to tremble and his internal organs to boil. It was extremely uncomfortable. And at this time, the 3 big steps 6-step martial artists also attacked. Boom, although these 3 monsters were frenzied and hostile to all living beings in the origin world, they clearly had a focus. Now, they had their eyes on Ling Han, and all of their attacks were directed at him. "What's wrong? Are you rebelling?" Xen Chihu attacked Ling Han, but at the same time, he attacked the 3 monsters. "You really are a vengeful spirit. I see you everywhere I go." Ling Han snorted. He quickly adjusted the chaos in his body, allowing his combat strength to return to its peak. When the 4 big steps 6-step martial artists attacked, it was even more impossible for Ling Han to match them. He used the plane to buy himself some time, and then he fled once more. Bang bang bang. Xen Chihu and the 3 big steps 6-step monsters chased after him, but as they chased, they also fought fiercely, causing the scene to become incomparably chaotic. But this was equivalent to buying time for Ling Han, allowing him to quickly shake off his pursuers. "Right now, I really can't please either side. Does everyone want to kill me?" Ling Han muttered, but his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. The greater the pressure, the more unfair treatment he received, the more his fighting spirit soared, and he dug out his own potential. He entered a short period of seclusion to digest the insights he had gained from this battle. This kind of lingering on the edge of life and death was the best way for him to gain enlightenment. He began to extrapolate the celestial sovereign symbols. After reaching the 3rd step, celestial sovereigns would have the qualifications to extrapolate celestial sovereign symbols. But as for how many third-step celestial sovereigns could do this, and what level the celestial sovereign symbol would be, that was a completely different matter. Ling Han had far too many celestial sovereign symbols within his body. He wanted to control them, using an existing 7-stream talisman to extrapolate its neighboring symbols. That way, if he could succeed, he would be able to obtain even more combined symbols. That would be much more useful than just randomly extrapolating one. Why didn't he just extrapolate a first-rate symbol? That was too difficult. Perhaps he could succeed, but it might take 100 million years, or even 1 billion years. Ling Han felt that increasing his cultivation base was more important. But after 30,000 years, Ling Han had successfully extrapolated a third-rate symbol. If news of this spread, countless jaws would drop. In just 30,000 years, he had already extrapolated an celestial sovereign symbol. I have too many advantages. I have the power of countless planes in my body, and I already have the embryonic form of the origin world. Then I used the resonance of the celestial sovereign symbols and the insights I gained after the life and death battle. That was why I only spent 30,000 years. Ling Han muttered to himself. He didn't continue his seclusion because the insights he had gained from the previous battle had already disappeared. He continued to explore the origin stone mine, but he discovered that it was gradually becoming more lively. More and more sixth-step experts were arriving. He couldn't rule out the possibility that they were here to mine the origin stones. But if he bumped into them, he wouldn't mind making a move. Ling Han had sunk into a bitter battle. There were enemies almost everywhere here, because this ruined plane was really too small. Several years later, Ling Han found a spatial passageway, and he entered a new plane. He should be the first person to enter this place. The surrounding mountains and rivers didn't show any signs of being excavated. Perhaps I can reach the peak of 4th step here. Ling Han unleashed his ability and began to search for the origin stone vein. Chapter 2954. Ling Han's luck began to turn for the better. He opened a great many origin stones that contained great medicines, allowing his cultivation to finally begin to increase at a decent rate. If this continued, he would only need a few 100,000 years to reach the peak stage of the 4th step. The problem was, were there so many great medicines here? No matter, he just had to mine as much as he could. The Empress and Hunyao both fully supported Ling Han. Their growth had already reached the limit, and the 4th step was their limit. Perhaps they could advance to the 5th step, but who knew how many years later that would be? Thus, the great medicines they mined would all be given to Ling Han, striving to help Ling Han break through to the 5th step as soon as possible. Just like that, Ling Han's cultivation slowly increased, and after more than 2 million years he finally reached the late stage of the 4th step, one step closer to the peak stage. But just at this moment, the passageway into this place was finally discovered, and a large number of elites barged in. Not only were there the heavenly venerables of the fiery frost plane, there were also Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han. He was discovered again. 7 creations of Frenzy appeared, each one exuding a terrifying aura that was even stronger than his. 6 steps, all of them were at the 6th step, and they were all at the peak stage of the 6th step. There were many 6th-step creations created by Frenzy, but there definitely weren't many that reached the peak stage of the 6th step, and those that still possessed intelligence were even fewer. Ling Han knew that Frenzy had truly become wary of him. Previously, there were 3 6th-step creations, and now there were 4 more, clearly determined to kill him no matter what. He immediately put the Empress and Hunyao away. When facing those with battle prowess of the 6th step, the 2 girls couldn't help him at all. With a shout, the 7 6th-step creations charged over, all of them exuding a terrifying aura, wanting to blast Ling Han into pieces. With just you guys, you're still a bit lacking. Ling Han exchanged blows with these monsters. He knew that he was no match for them, but this was a rare opportunity to gain experience. Even if he couldn't gain enlightenment, he could still sharpen his battle prowess, which was also quite good. However, the battle hadn't lasted long, and Ling Han felt immense pressure. Not only were the monsters created by frenzy at the peak of Step 6, but they were also proficient in techniques and even had second-rate combination talismans. If it was a first-class talisman, frenzy should have been bestowed to Meng Dong, Huangfu Dongyue, and the others. Even if it was the strongest in the world, it could not be comprehended so easily. It would definitely take a long time. Therefore, in order to make its creations powerful enough to kill Ling Han, it could only equip these monsters with second-rate combination talismans. In fact, this was also a kind of risk. Without his own spiritual imprint, a sixth-step Empyrean that had developed spiritual wisdom would definitely slowly awaken and form its own free will. It would walk on its own path and break away from the control of the frenzy. Which Empyrean was willing to submit to others, let alone a peak sixth step? However, in a short period of time, these 6 steps would not be able to break free from the control of frenzy. In order to kill Ling Han, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Boom! The violent power surged like a tsunami, bombarding endlessly towards Ling Han. Ling Han parried, but his opponents were too strong, and they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. Naturally, he could only parry. Moreover, he was surrounded by danger, and he was constantly walking on the edge of life and death. There was nothing he could do. His battle prowess was very strong, but his body had only been tempered by 3 kinds of intrinsic power, and its degree of toughness was far from comparable to that of a 6th step. Even so, he fought with all his might. Unless he truly could not hold on any longer, he would absolutely not retreat. After fighting for another dozen or so days, Ling Han finally withdrew. The 7 great monsters hurriedly chased after him, but Ling Han used the terrain here to constantly shake them off. He had been here for 2 million years. Although he did not know every place like the back of his hand, it was no problem for him to trap these newcomers. The 7 great monsters chased after him, and 3 of them were actually severely injured by the energy storm. If it were not for the fact that there were still 4 of them, Ling Han really wanted to turn around and kill them. After escaping, Ling Han began to cultivate in seclusion again. After using 30,000 years, Ling Han digested the insights he had gained from this battle. At the same time, he used the resonance of the celestial venerate symbol to create another 7th stream talisman. If he could continue like this, he might only need 100 million years to create all the 7th stream talismans. He came out of seclusion and continued to search for origin stones, but he did not expect to run into Xen Chihu again. This fellow was haunting him. Ling Han really wondered if he had a grudge against him in his previous life. Why was he always staring at him? There was nothing much to say. Let's just fight. He now had the primordial power of a late-stage 6th step cultivator, which was only slightly inferior to Xen Chihu. This made him completely qualified to fight. As the two fought, although Xen Chihu still had the upper hand, the gap was not large. If Ling Han could reach the peak of 4th step, he would not be weaker than Xen Chihu, and it would not be strange for him to have the upper hand. They both used their full strength, and the fight was extremely intense. Ling Han had cultivated hundreds of planes, and when he released them to suppress them, even a 6th step cultivator would be affected. As for Xen Chihu, he had a first-class combination talisman, which was also incomparably domineering. When he attacked, there was nothing that could not be destroyed. They fought for several months, and finally, a 6th step cultivator from the Frostflame plane appeared and joined the battle to attack Ling Han. Xen Chihu, let's fight again next time. Ling Han retreated. But next time I will make you cry. You have a sharp tongue, Xen Chihu said coldly. He only chased for a while before giving up. The terrain here was complex, and if there was not much of a difference in speed, no one could catch up to the other. It was difficult to kill in celestial venerate of the same level. This was not just a saying. After escaping from Xen Chihu, Ling Han naturally went into seclusion again. Although Xen Chihu was very annoying, he was a relatively good candidate as an opponent to sharpen himself. In a one-on-one situation, the only people who could give Ling Han such great pressure were Xen Chihu, Wu Haoyang, Lin Yulian, and a few others. What a coincidence! When Ling Han came out of seclusion, he quickly encountered Xen Chihu again. There was nothing to say, and the two of them continued to fight. Compared to the previous battle, Ling Han had made great progress, but as a genius, how could Xen Chihu not have improved? Xen Chihu still had the upper hand, but his advantage was becoming smaller and smaller. I really let you become my subordinate, Xen Chihu said harshly. Unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world, Ling Han said indifferently as his fists swung even faster. Once I reach the 6th step, killing you will be as easy as flipping my hand, Xen Chihu said. Nonsense, if I reach the 6th step, killing you will be as easy as beating my own son, Ling Han retorted. Not only did the two of them fight fiercely, but they also fought fiercely with their mouths. Ling Han and the large black dog had long since trained their tongues to be poisonous, but he did not expect that Xen Chihu was not easy to deal with either. His verbal skills were not any weaker than Ling Han's. This battle lasted for close to a month before the two of them reluctantly called it a day. It was not that someone had barged in and interrupted their battle, but that they had used all the techniques they could. If they continued to fight, they would just be repeating themselves, and they would not be able to do anything to their opponent. The end of this chapter. Chapter 2956. The learning ability of a 7-step elite was naturally strong. In just a few days, that female supreme had already learned to speak, but her intelligence was not to be praised, still at the level of a 3-year-old child. Ling Han taught her how to restrain her aura. If this continued, the skin all over his body would split open. The red-clothed woman learned for a few more days, and finally learned how to control her aura. If she did not actively reveal it, even a 6-step elite wouldn't discover how strong she was. Ling Han let the Empress and Hu Niu out of the Celestial Entertainer residence, and the two women couldn't help but be surprised when they saw a beautiful woman suddenly appear. This woman's beauty was definitely not inferior to theirs. Who is she? Hu Niu asked curiously. Who is she? The red-clothed woman also asked with her head tilted. She was now the same as Xiao Gu in the past, and liked to imitate others the most. Dug out from a rock. Ling Han spread his hands. The two women were curious and stared at this woman. The red-clothed woman also tilted her head to look back at them, her eyes also filled with curiosity. Why were these two different from Ling Han? Don't underestimate her, she's a 7-step elite, Ling Han said. What? The Empress and Hu Niu were both given a fright. There was no existence more terrifying than a 7-step elite in this world. Husband, what kind of luck is this? You even opened up a 7-step elite. The Empress said ruefully. Previously, Ling Han had opened up a 7-step elite, but that was a corpse, unlike this one, which was a living existence. If this spread out, it would definitely scare a large number of people to death. The red-clothed woman giggled. She was a child, fond of playing around and mischievous. What's your name? Hu Niu asked curiously. The red-clothed woman tilted her head. I don't have a name. Hu Niu couldn't help but be excited. Then Niu will give you one. But the red-clothed woman clapped her hands. She seemed to find Hu Niu's words interesting and imitated her. Niu wants a name. No, Niu is the only one that can use it, Hu Niu emphasized. The red-clothed woman seemed to understand, and nodded blankly. Hu Niu was very excited. This was giving a 7th-step martial artist a name, so she felt a great sense of accomplishment. I'll call you Sister Leopard. After thinking for a long time, she finally thought of a name. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. He had given Hu Niu this name previously, and this little girl still wanted to carry it forward? He's wearing crimson robes. Why don't we name him after that? The Empress suggested. It was rare for her to be interested in the matters of others. After all, it was 7 steps. Sister Leopard sounds better, Hu Niu insisted. Chi is more suitable. The Empress didn't back down. The two girls were at loggerheads again. They both wanted the right to name the 7 steps. Absolute flame. The red-clothed woman suddenly spoke. She pointed at herself. Niu likes this name. Well, neither of them got what they wanted. Hu Niu, meanwhile, jumped up. Don't snatch Niu's exclusive property. The red-robed woman, Empyrean Jade Fire, giggled. Niu is Jade Fire. No matter how furious Hu Niu was, and how she protested repeatedly, Empyrean Jade Fire didn't mind at all, and firmly believed in this name. Ling Han tried to ask her about the matters before she fell into deep sleep, but Empyrean Jade Fire couldn't remember anything. She had even just started learning how to speak, so how could she have any memories of the past? Let's go and take a look at other places. Ling Han gave up. Jade Fire is 7 steps. Can you take us to a deeper plane? The Empress asked. Ling Han nodded. It's still you who understands me the best. Nonsense, Nyo also understands, Hu Nyo hurriedly said. The 4 of them directly descended, and wanted to forcefully barge into the next plane like this. Not long after, they could see the flames formed by intrinsic particles burning fiercely. The closer they got to the core of the plane cluster, the more terrifying the pressure became. It could burn even a 6th step Empyrean into ashes. Ling Han pushed Empyrean Jade Fire out, but this female paragon didn't have any courage at all. With a shriek, she immediately fled back. However, she was too strong. With a sharp shriek, the eardrums of Ling Han and the others ruptured, and blood flowed out. Those intrinsic flames also seemed to have suffered a blow, and were extinguished one after another. Empyrean Jade Fire couldn't help but be startled. She hadn't thought that the might of her shriek would actually be so powerful. She was curious, and released another sharp shriek that rolled out, extinguishing the flames even further away. Ling Han hurriedly drew Hu Nyo and the Empress into the celestial visitor residence, and then used his own power to protect them. Otherwise, even if they were protected by a heavenly venerable tool, so what? They would definitely be shaken into a bloody mess. Meanwhile, he himself covered his ears with his hands, but he still couldn't avoid the skin all over his body being torn apart, and blood flowing out of his orifices. Stop, 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 he called out. Empyrean Jade Fire was having fun, and completely ignored his existence. When she finally discovered that something was wrong with him, Ling Han was already covered in blood, and the skin all over his body had long since been torn to shreds. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, tilting her head, her expression innocent. Ling Han was speechless. He had been wounded to such an extent, yet he still couldn't take revenge, which made him feel gloomy. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't defeat her now, even if he could, would he have the nerve to bully a child? Forget it, he was definitely going to suffer this loss. Come. Let's retreat first, and I'll teach you a few moves. Ling Han sighed. If he wanted Empyrean Jade Fire to open a path for him, then he would first have to let her learn how to control her power and how to use it. Otherwise, before they could enter the next level, he would already be dead. Empyrean Jade Fire still wanted to play, but when he saw Ling Han walking all the way back, he could only follow gloomily. Next, Ling Han taught Empyrean Jade Fire how to use her own power. 7 steps was 7 steps. Empyrean Jade Fire learned very quickly, and probably in a few months' time, she would be able to perfectly control her own power. But only a few days had passed, and Ling Han was discovered. This time, it was the people of the fiery frost plain. There were a total of 7 people, and they were naturally all at the 6th step. Yu Burong Ling Han immediately recognized one of them. This old fellow really wanted to kill him, and he was working so hard to find him. "Ling Han, I've found you," Yu Burong said darkly. Ling Han made an "oh" sound. Then, "Congratulations." "Congratulations to me." Yu Burong humphed. "Did you think this was a game? Now that I've found you, it means that it's time for you to die," he said darkly. Ling Han naturally didn't care. It was just 7 steps. So what if they surrounded him? They couldn't kill him instantly. As long as he couldn't be killed instantly, he could tear open the void and return to the origin world. No one could chase after him. Furthermore, there was a 7th step beside him now. "Why don't you come and try? Then bring it on. See how I'll take care of you," Ling Han said with a smile. "Go." "There's no need to be polite," Yu Burong said coldly. The 7 steps surrounded him, and they all emitted a dense pressure. Chapter 2957. How many 6th step cultivators were there in the world? 100 or so might have been a bit more in the beginning, but there had been internal strife, and some of the 6th step cultivators had fallen. So now, there were only about 100. Although the sixth step cultivators could not be called sovereigns, they were still the strongest in the world. Each one of them had the power to sweep through the ages. Yu Borong's group of 7 surrounded him, all of them brimming with killing intent. This was someone who had to be killed. Yu Borong had done so to take revenge for his son, while the other 6 felt that Ling Han was too monstrous. Once he was allowed to possess the battle prowess of a 7th step, he would cause immeasurable damage to the origin world. What do you want to do? Empyrean Flame asked somewhat timidly. These people were brimming with killing intent, scaring her to death. Those who are with this brat are definitely not good people. Let's kill them together, one of the 6th step cultivators said. Yu Borong was the first to attack. Hong, he raised his palm and slammed it towards Ling Han and Empyrean Flame. When Empyrean Flame saw this attack, his first reaction was not to dodge or block, but to grab his head and scream in terror. The sound waves turned into waves that spread in all directions. Ling Han had long since been prepared. Not only had he covered his ears, but he had also activated more than 100 planes to defend himself. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the planes, but fortunately, they did not shatter. Even so, blood still flowed out of Ling Han's nose. He was unable to completely avoid this vicious attack. If he was in such a state, then there was no need to mention Yu Borong and the others. They were all sent flying, their clothes in tatters. Their skin had split open, and blood was pouring out. So what if they were 6th step cultivators? In front of the power of a 7th step cultivator, their hair was in a mess, and they were bleeding from their orifices. Ling Han took this opportunity to attack. He went straight for Yu Borong. This old bastard had targeted him time and time again. He was too hateful. Peng, peng, peng. He attacked with his full strength, and all of the 8th grade symbols activated, increasing his strength by 1,000 times. With his current late-stage 6th-step power, he had already reached the point where he could suppress Yu Borong. Yu Furong was currently in a state of agitation. Who would have thought that a girl who looked so weak could actually explode with such terrifying battle prowess? He had 6 steps, but he couldn't block the power of the roar. What did this mean? This woman was a 7th-step supremacy. But how could that be? 2 generations of the primordial world only added up to 10 7th-step masters. Even if there were to be more in the future, they would be born from Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, and Golden Silkworm, not this woman. This was still not the main point. The main point was that he actually made a move against a 7th-step Supreme Exalt. Was he courting death? Even though he possessed an incomparably calm temperament, he was still panicking in his heart at this moment. Because of this, he could only retreat step by step in the face of Ling Han's storm-like attacks. The other 6 6th-step Empyreans were also shocked until their scalps went numb. They looked at Empyrean Deadfire in a daze, their hearts in a whirl for a moment. But it can't go on forever, can it? Greetings, milord. They all bowed towards Empyrean Deadflame. Empyrean Final Flame looked at these people blankly. You guys were so fierce just now, and now you're acting so submissive. What are you trying to do? She said weakly, why are you guys hitting Nyo? The 6th-step powerhouses couldn't help but open their mouths wide. One of them even directly spurted out. Even the self-restraint of a 6th-step powerhouse was not enough. Nyo? Which Empyrean would call himself that, especially one who was an undying and indestructible 7th-step Supreme Exalt. His image crumbled instantly. May I ask how I should address you, milord? A 6th-step powerhouse asked with cupped fists. Empyrean Final Flame immediately became interested. He puffed out his chest and said, Nyo is Deadfire. Deadfire? The 6 Empyreans looked at each other, clearly very puzzled. They had never heard of such a Empyrean before, let alone a 7th-step Supreme Exalt. It was impossible for an Empyrean to appear out of nowhere. Of course, those who came from the previous primordial world were exceptions. Wait, could this person be a Supreme from the previous primordial world? Yes. This was the most likely guess. Greetings, milord. The 6 powerhouses bowed once again. Deadfire was very pleased with himself. He tilted his chin and looked left and right, very satisfied. The 6 powerhouses were even more puzzled. Was this really a 7-step supreme exalt? But they had personally experienced how powerful this woman was. If that wasn't a 7-step supreme exalt, then what was? They could only watch from the side. Ling Han clearly had a close relationship with this 7-step supreme exalt. If she didn't say anything, how would they dare to deal with Ling Han? Was he tired of living? Speaking of which, when Ling Han unleashed his full power, Yu Furong wasn't his match. In addition, he had been injured by Deadfire's roar. Although his injuries weren't very serious, it would still affect his battle prowess. Under Ling Han's tide-like attacks, the effects were constantly magnified, making his disadvantage more and more obvious. Yu Furong couldn't help but be shocked. How long had it been, and he was already no longer Ling Han's match? If this continued, forget about avenging his son's death, even he would die under Ling Han's fists. He hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoists, why aren't you making a move? Are you really going to let this unfilial son act so viciously?" The 6 powerhouses looked at each other, then at Empyrean Final Flame. But she didn't have any intention of speaking, so who dared to make a move? Did she think that a 7th-step Supreme Exalt was just for show? Ling Han's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. He had to kill Yu Furong within these 2 hours of explosive attacks. Otherwise, even if he used the 9 streams combination talisman again, the increase in his battle prowess would drop to more than 200 times. In that case, it would be very difficult to kill Yu Furong. After all, he was at the 6th step. Since ancient times, not many people could reach such a height. Which one of them wasn't a genius among geniuses, an overlord among overlords? Yu Furong was also deeply aware of this. He defended with all his might, not hoping to achieve anything, but hoping to survive these 2 hours. He took out his Empyrean treasure, which was a silver spear. As it danced, it transformed into a white dragon that possessed great power. Ever since he had reached the 6th step, he hadn't used his Empyrean treasure, because the increase in his battle prowess was negligible. But now, he had taken it out, which showed how bad his situation was. Even if it was just a tiny increase, it was like a life-saving straw. How desperate was this? Ling Han let out a long howl. "Old bastard, I definitely won't let you escape this time." He took out all the planes, and in an instant, more than 300 planes that were close to high level appeared. They illuminated the heavens, forming an indescribable pressure. Yu Furong's movement stiffened, and he was instantly struck by Ling Han's fist, causing him to spit out blood violently. His internal organs also spat out, all of them shattered. "Milord, please show mercy." Seeing that Yu Furong was really about to die, the 6 powerhouses finally couldn't help but speak up, begging Empyrean Final Flame for mercy. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.